Good day, everyone. It is undeniably a fact that children are being first honed, loved, educated, and taken care of inside our homes, where parents play the most significant role for their children's growth and development. As a quotation by an anonymous author says, behind every child who believes in himself is a parent who believed in them first. I am Miss Lizelle B. Africa, and I'll be your host for today's webinar on managing stress and parenting difficulties moving forward from COVID-19 crisis. To formally start the program, let's ask for the divine's guidance through an invocation and to be followed by the singing of Philippine National Anthem through an audiovisual presentation.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisingil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilaghang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng luwalhating pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
To address his personal welcoming message, may we have our dearest school head, Sir Sulpicio C. Alferez III.
Good afternoon to each and every one of you who are with their respective homes or wherever you are at this very moment. I'm happy that the grade 9 level organization sponsor or spearheaded this activity entitled Managing Stress and Parenting Difficulties Moving Forward from COVID-19 Crisis. I know for a fact that we are in a situation wherein all of this are but a challenging moment for each and every one of us. Whether you are a parent, you are a daughter or a son, or even just a part of an institution, all of us were able to experience this stressful and difficult situation in our lives. But we must be thankful enough because this is one way of experiencing. We are being asked to, or we are asked to undergo or underwent a process wherein all of this are but learning experiences. Kaya sa inyong lahat na nandidiyan, nanonood ngayong hapong ito, let us try to make use of our time by listening to our speakers, Mr. and Mrs. Badilla, and of course their son. Makikita nyo na nandyan palaging magbibigay sa atin, magbibigay sa inyo ng kaukulang pagbigay ng pwede nating punan or sabi niyan, point of reference kung saan pwede nating magamit whether as a student, as a parent, or even as a teacher. Kailangan natin na ang bagay na ito. Kaya sa inyong lahat, as I welcome you to this activity, try to sit back and relax and take all those positive input given by these speakers para naman makatulong sa ating lahat. And of course, gusto ko ring pasalamatan sila. Nandyan din si Ma'am Ana Dominic de Dios na tutulong din sa atin para mas lalo nating maintindihan at sabi niyan, maalis or matulungan tayo sa bagay na ito. And ganun din po ay nandyan si Ma'am Pauline Fermin ng Acumen Strategy Consultants na ganun din makakatulong at tutulong din sa atin para mas lalo nating maintindihan kung paano tayo maka-moving forward after this crisis, after these difficulties that we have experienced for the past 2 years. Moving on, let's hope for a better tomorrow, a better normal, sabi niyan. So, nandito yung mga taong ito para tayo ay tulungan. So, sa inyong lahat, at lalong-lalo na sa organizer, sa grade 9 level organization, si Shane ang year level coordinator dyan. So, salamat for organizing this kind of activity na makakatulong sa ating mga kaguruan at the same time sa ating mga learners or mag-aaral. So, sa inyong lahat, maraming salamat at isang magandang hapon ulit.
To introduce our guest speakers for session 1, may I call on Ma'am Vivencia Enlabay from the Science Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our speakers for part 1 of session 1 will be sharing their insights on positive parenting practices. Indeed, they are well versed on their topic since they are a family themselves and volunteers of family ministry of the Archdiocese of Cáceres. The head of the family is Mr. Rosendo I. Badilla, a theology instructor at Ateneo de Naga University. Her wife, Mrs. Janet B. Badilla, is the Executive Director of Office of Mission and Identity at Ateneo de Naga University. Their son, Mr. Juan Romulo Michael B. Badilla, is the Learning and Development Officer of Magsaysay People's Resources Corporation. Our speaker for part 2 of session 1 will be sharing her expertise on managing stress and improving mental health and well-being. Ms. Ana Dominic Vergel de Dios is a registered psychometrician and a graduate of BS Psychology at De La Salle University. Let us all give them a warm applause.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We are just grateful to be doing this with you. So we would like to start by thanking Camarines International High School for bringing us all together for this wonderful aim of learning from each other and making our families even better as we discuss positive parental practices, managing stress, and improving mental health and well-being. Let us begin with a prayer. Lord, we pray that you bless us as we go through this session. Make it an opportunity for us to grow in understanding your call for us, bringing every member of our family to you, that we may become fully yours, faithful children whose joy is in the fulfillment of the Father's will. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Allow us to introduce ourselves to you. Janet and I are volunteers of Cáceres Family Ministry. We are full-time employees of Ateneo de Naga University. I am a theology teacher in the college and the graduate school.
I'm Janet. I am a formator and administrator, the Executive Director of Office of Mission and Identity of Ateneo de Naga. Miko, our son, whom you see in the slide, is also an Atenean. He is a licensed psychometrician and is now working full-time in Manila with Magsaysay People's Resources Corporation as Learning and Development Officer.
Nikki, our niece, is also a licensed psychometrician. She's now doing her MA in psychology at De La Salle University, where she also received her bachelor's degree.
We are very happy to share with you our own personal experiences of parenting. We are a couple of very happy parents of Miko and Nikki in a way, since we are very close as family.
We are glad to share with you the parenting values and behaviors that we have practiced as a family. Miko will share with you his personal experience of parenting, talking especially about having a healthy communication and relationship with his parents.
Nikki, on the other hand, will speak about identifying signs of depression in our children and how parents can manage their stress and anxiety. And so, this is the way we will go through our session. We have short 3 parts: laying down foundations, just so we can level off where we are coming from. And then we proceed with sharing our values in positive parenting, and then sharing tips in identifying signs of depression in our children and how we as parents can manage stress and anxiety. And so in dealing with this positive parenting, we thought it would be good to begin where the foundation is, where we can all begin, between the couples who would morph into parents. As we know, families really begin in the love between the couple. We have not only fallen in love with each other, but we have decided to deeply love each other. We have committed ourselves to loving one another. I think that's the good beginning. This is the very same love which we make as our capital upon entering family life. And so, as Christian parents, we go back to our love, to what the church teaches us about love.
So thank you, Mami. Allow us to lay down some foundations in our sharing this afternoon. Our main source for these is Pope Francis's exhortation, Amoris Laetitia, or the joy of love. The document, The Joy of Love, or Amoris Laetitia, is a product of a synod. A synod is a series of meetings of bishops, consultations around the world. And the document was signed in March 19, 2016 on the Solemnity of Saint Joseph. Papal exhortations generally encourage a particular virtue or activity. And in Amoris Laetitia, Pope Francis invites us to rediscover the joy of love in the family. He does so fully aware of the different challenges, difficulties, even threats to families, and the different reasons why they sometimes sadly would go dysfunctional. And he reminds us that the root of the joy in the family is love. The very same love we celebrate as husbands and wives. The same love we proclaim in Scripture. So let us go back to the first letter of John. Let us go back to the Scripture and once more be reminded of what or who love is. 1 John. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is of God. Everyone who loves is begotten by God and knows God. Whoever is without love does not know God, for God is love. Beloved, if God so called us, we also must love one another. If God so loved us, we also must love one another. No one has ever seen God, yet if we love one another, God remains in us, and His love is brought to perfection in us. So there it is. God is love, and love is God. So whomever has loved, has manifested God, kung sino man ang nagmamahal, na ipapahayag niya, na ipapakita niya ang Panginoon. Whoever experienced being loved has encountered God. Diba? That's so beautiful. That is why it is far-fetched sometimes for our children to believe in a loving God when they have not experienced love in the family. So inversely, when we refuse to love, we refuse to let God shine through us. You know? So kapag hindi tayo nagmamahal, hindi natin hinahayaan ng Diyos, pinipigilan natin ng Diyos na ipahayag ang kanyang kabutihan sa ating kapwa, sa ating pamilya. So far we have said that love is the foundation of marriage and the family. So love is the reason why we enter into marriage, why we raise a family. And if God is love and love is God, therefore God is the foundation of marriage and the family. Kaya baga sinasabi na it takes 3 to make a marriage work. The husband and the wife and God. Diba? The family, imperfect as it is, images God. Kapahayagan ng Panginoon, ano? Ang pamilya ay imahe, ang mag-asawa particularly ay imahe ng Diyos, wangis ng Diyos. For just as the family images God, the children, the husband and the wife. For just as the Blessed Trinity is a community of persons, merong Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, so is the family composed of several persons, the husband and the wife and the children. And so, just as God is a community of love, the family, being an image of God, is also called to be a community of love. But responding to that call to love is not an easy thing. Diba? So, sabi sa Amoris Laetitia 66, the covenant of love and fidelity lived with the Holy Family of Nazareth illuminates the principle which gives shape to every family and enable it better to face the vicissitudes of life and history. So maraming challenges. There are challenges in loving. It's not easy. We know that. You know? With the many challenges, the many temptations, with our shortcomings, it is not easy to be faithful to our family, to our spouse, to our God, to the community. And so we are given a model in the Holy Family of Nazareth. Okay? Sabi dito, the covenant of love and fidelity lived by the Holy Family illuminates the principle. Diba? So binibigyan tayo ng halimbawa, binibigyan tayo ng modelo in the Holy Family of Nazareth. On this basis, every family, despite its weaknesses, despite sa ating kahinaan, can become a light in the darkness of the world. So the family is called to be a light in the world. Liwanag sa dilim, di ba? Despite its weaknesses, yan ang panawagan sa atin. We are asked to step up. Even Mary experienced that. And we read it in the Gospel of Luke, verse 9. Diba? She had the Son of God with her. Kasama niya ang anak ng Diyos. Ang anak niya ay ang anak ng Diyos. But she did not have all the answers. Tayo pa kaya? Diba? Nababasa natin sa Luke 2 verse 9, Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Ano? Ang daming hindi niya naiintindihan tungkol kay Jesus na ibinigay sa kanya upang alagaan at palakihin. Pero dinala niya ito at pinagnilayan. Pinagnilayan. The point that we're merely saying here is that si Maria na ngang si Maria, ang Diyos na ang kanyang inaalagaan, pero sabi natin kanina, she did not have all the answers. So let us not lose hope. Ano? When we have these difficulties, challenges in our families. But families, going back to Amoris Laetitia, families cannot help but be places of support, guidance, and direction, however much they may have to rethink their methods and discover new resources. We have no choice. That is what we signed up for. You know, when we decided to have children, tayo yung gagabay sa ating mga anak. Yung mga biyaya ng Panginoon sa atin, ibinigay ng Panginoon upang pangalagaan, palakihin, i-guide. Ano? However, ang daming challenges. Ano? Very ambivalent and very unique ang mga tao. And therefore, we have to find ways so that maging mas effective tayo. Halimbawa, itong ginagawa natin ito. This is a method. It's discovering new resources, maybe for some, maybe sa inyo yung mga sa iba sa inyo yung mga maririnig nyo sa amin ngayong hapon ay narinig nyo na, pero sana mas mapatatag, mapatatag at mas matulungan kayo in finding ways to be more effective parents to our children. So yun. Pero it is not only during those times that we are with them that they get support and guidance from us. Hindi naman lahat ng panahon kasama tayo ng ating mga anak. Parents need to consider what they want their children to be exposed to. And this is necessary, and this necessarily means being concerned about who is providing their entertainment, who is entering their rooms through television and electronic devices, and with whom they are spending their free time. Ano po? Kasi hindi naman sa lahat ng panahon nababantayan natin sila. And therefore, kailangan pag-isipan din natin yung mga panahon na hindi natin sila nakakasama, sino ang kasama nila? What entertainment? What entertains them? What entertainment are they getting during those times? Okay? So, this part of Amoris Laetitia, itong nakikita natin sa slide natin ngayon, expounds on an earlier statement from the same document that stated, ito yung slide, ito yung line na yun from 84 kasi ito. It is important to reiterate that the overall education of children is a most serious duty, at the same time a primary right of parents. So yun, nasa sa atin. Nasa sa ating mga magulang na kasalalay talaga ang education, ang holistic education ng ating mga anak. Yung formation ng ating mga anak. So, yan. Yung mga hobbies ng ating mga anak, kailangan meron tayong kaalaman tungkol dito. I mean, we could not just let go of our children and let them fend for themselves. If we are to be responsible parents, even those things that they are doing when they are not with us, we know about. And we make sure that they are formative activities still. So, hindi sapat na pinag-aaral natin sila, hindi sapat that binibigay natin yung mga needs nila, mga pangangailangan nila. Our responsibility goes beyond that. But that only happens if we devote time to our children. Speaking of important things with simplicity and concern and finding healthy ways for them to spend their times, will we be able to shield them from harm? Kasi nga, hindi naman sa lahat ng panahon kasama natin sila. So what is important is quality time. Quality time. When they are with us, we really are with them. So when we involve ourselves in their concerns, when we show interest on their group of friends, on their latest craze, when we listen to their stories, very important. Only then will we be able to shield them from harm. Kasi nakikilala natin yung ating mga anak. Nalalaman natin kung ano nangyayari sa kanila. How can we do so if we do not even know what is happening to them? What is in their mind? What are their fears? What do they feel strongly about? What do they feel strongly against? We can therefore be confident about our children even when they are not with us if we invested on time, on the time that they were with us or are still with us. So, napakahalaga noon. Napakahalaga na yung panahon that we are together are quality time. So we have to be vigilant. Vigilance is always necessary. And neglect is never beneficial. So we are reading from Amoris Laetitia. Parents have to help prepare children and adolescents to confront the risk, for example, of aggression, abuse, and drug addiction. However, hindi ibig sabihin na maging obsessed obsessed tayo sa ating mga anak. Obsession, sabi, is not education. We cannot control every situation that a child may experience. Dito daw, totoo yung sinasabi that time is greater than space. In other words, ang sinasabi, ang tinuturo sa atin, mas mahalaga na meron tayong proseso. Mas mahalaga na meron tayong proseso na madala tayo sa mas malalim na pagkakakilanlan sa ating mga anak at mas malalim na pakikitungo, relasyon sa ating mga anak. Ano? Not that we dominate space, na lagi tayong kasama o lagi natin silang kasama kasi ayaw natin silang mawalay sa ating paningin because we want to make sure na maayos sila. Yun yung obsession na sinasabi. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. Ang mahalaga is that we educate and strengthen and prepare our children in facing challenges. In facing challenges. Yung anak namin, Miko, then was growing up, isang concern yun ni Janet. Concern namin, but she was very vocal about it. Lalong-lalo na nag-iisang anak namin si Miko. How was he going to deal with the community? So, isang concern namin yon. Pero we came up to the conclusion na we really have to form him, prepare him. Kasi eventually naman talaga we will have to let go of him. We will not always be there. So all we can do is really prepare him. Diba? Sabi dito sa atin, parents have to help prepare children and adolescents to confront the risk. Halimbawa of aggression, abuse, or drug addiction. So yun. So sabi, kailangan natin silang tulungan so that they grow in freedom, they grow in maturity, overall discipline, and real autonomy. Ayan. Only then na yung mga anak natin ay matututong tumayo sa kanilang sarili. Ayan. So, parents rely on schools to ensure the basic instruction of their children. Basic instruction. But can never completely delegate the moral formation of their children to others. So very clear yan. Ano po? Yung basic instructions sa ating mga anak, sinishare natin with the school. However, yung moral formation ng ating mga anak sa ating talaga yan nakasalalay. So that statement is very true. As was earlier stated by we parents, have the primary duty in the formation of our children. And the school's role is merely to assist us, to foster what we have taught our children at home. A person's affective and ethical development is ultimately grounded in a particular experience. Di ba? Yung affection, yung pagiging mabuti, yung pagtingin niya sa tama, sa mali, is grounded in particular experience, namely that his or her parents can be trusted. So very important yun, di ba? Children usually look up to their parents, kay mama, kay papa. Pero kapag nasira yun, lalo na in the formative years of our children, di ba? Ito na nga lang ang pinagkakatiwalaan ko pagkatapos. In the child's fragile thinking, bigay na bigay siya sa kanyang mga magulang, and then she loses his trust to his parents. So ano na lang? How much more with other people, di ba? This means that parents as educators are responsible by their affection and example for instilling in their children trust and loving respect. Okay? So for us, what this slide is teaching is that we make it clear to our children that they are loved, they are respected, and we are good examples to them. and that, we love them and love them unconditionally. Parents are also responsible for shaping the will of their children, fostering good habits, natural inclination to goodness, making good choices. This entails presenting certain ways of thinking and acting as desirable and worthwhile as part of a gradual process of growth. So here we're talking about making choices, instilling good behavior, inclinations that will foster among our children, that we will foster among our children. Dapat meron tayong deliberate effort in forming our children. A little story, my wife would sometimes complain about my driving. She finds it rough, my driving, compared to how our son would drive. So looking back, I realized that I learned how to drive from a tricycle driver. Tricycle driver ang nagturo sa akin na magmaneho sa sasakyan, sa kotse. While we had Miko enrolled in a proper driving school. So, kung ano ang puno, yun ang bunga. Palibasa ako, natuto ako na magmaneho. Galing sa isang, hindi naman talaga, walang professional na pag-aaral sa pagmamaneho. Yun ang nakuha ko. On the other hand, because Miko, nag-aral siya sa isang driving school, mas refined yung natutunan niya ng pagmamaneho. So, anong klaseng bunga ba ang gusto natin sa ating mga anak? Are we teaching them well by being good examples? Are we teaching them well by being good examples? Everything we said so far can be summed up dito sa isinulat ni Pope Paul VI. Actually, mas matanda pa ito na document kaysa sa Amoris Laetitia. This was promulgated in 1965. Gaudium et Spes. Joy and hope. Yan ang ibig sabihin ng Gaudium et Spes. Ang mahabang title ng document is Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World. Anyway, ang sinasabi lang naman ang gusto ko lang naman na bigyan ng diin sa sinasabi ni Pope Paul VI is that the family is the school of deeper humanity. The family is the school of deeper humanity. So let us break that down. The family is where we teach our children the reality of who we really are. Creatures of God, born out of love, humans, vulnerable, but endowed with gifts, loved despite our infidelities. Diba? Yan ang supposedly na that is who we really are, and supposedly we learn that in the family. In the family, we teach not so much in words, but in our everyday interactions. Well, of course, words din, words also. In our tawag dito? I'm sorry. We teach our children through the support that we give them. Our unconditional loving, our forgiving, even in our reprimanding, in our correcting, in the way we treat others. Kasi nakikita ng ating mga anak, the way we treat our house help, even the irritating neighbor, the way we treat the house pet, or the environment, creation in general, the way we deal with fast food crews or delivery guys. All these are lessons for our children to learn by. We are their teachers. And the home, the family, is the school of deeper humanity. In summary of this first part, we have said so far that love, and therefore God, is the foundation of marriage and the family, and that the husband and the wife are symbols. We are to symbolize God's love, particularly, primarily to our children. And the Holy Family of Nazareth is given to us as our model in facing the challenges of life. Ibig sabihin, we're not left to fend for ourselves. Binigyan tayo ng huwaran in facing the challenges of life. And the formation of the child is the most serious duty and a primary right of parents. Thank you. And I'm going to give you Janet, who will begin positive parenting through our values, our practices. Mami?
Thank you. So the foundation has been laid down to us, which is love of the couple, rooted in God's love, and love as our connection with God. This foundation is very important because that's also the foundation of our sharing with you. When we speak of positive parenting, we really ground this to our own family values, our own practices in the family. So I'd like to begin some sort of witnessing to these teachings on love, on God as love, as our source of love, through our own family experience. So I begin with the values that we hold in our family. The first would be about love. We deeply love and we deeply value love in the family. Not just any love, but love that is attentive, focused, and wholehearted. Actually, this description came from Miko himself in one of our many conversations. In one of my conversations with Miko, I remember I asked him particularly to describe his own experience of love in the family when we were asked to give a family recollection with St. Paul Academy in Goa. And so I asked him, "Son, can you just give me an idea how you experienced love in the family?" And he described it this way. Wow. For him to say that the kind of love that he experienced with us is one that is attentive, focused, and wholehearted. So I asked him, talaga, hindi ka nambobola? So attentive and focused love. This quality of loving means that when you love, you give time. So you are present. You give quality time. Being attentive means being present, not absent. You cannot be attentive if you're absent. So it is about presence, quality presence. It does not mean being there all the time, because as a full-time administrator myself, being employed, it simply is not possible to be with him all the time. Yet, despite being busy with work, I have always made Miko a priority. Sabi nga ni Miko, I drop everything when he needs me. And I'm very happy to do that. I'm very happy to share that kind of love to him. When we are present with our children, we would know what is going on with our child. And therefore, we will be able to respond whenever needed. Wholehearted love, wholehearted response. And this is my own source of joy. I love loving Miko, of course, loving Ringo. Hindi ako matipid sa pagmamahal, kumbaga. No. Rather, I give it all. You know, our children can sense when our love is partial, when our love is not from the heart. Because it is possible to love only with our mind or to love partially. We say we love, but it has to be in our actions too. And actions, love in action, can only come from the heart. When we love only with our mind, it is not enough. And so therefore, it has to come from the heart. And when we love from the heart, when we love with all our mind, our heart, and our soul, wholehearted loving, then they can really feel it. As a mother, I think this comes naturally to us. Our loving, our parenting becomes our loving. Our parenting, quality parenting out of love becomes our very own expression of love. So those are the first tips on positive parenting. Our own experience of positive parental values, positive parenting. The second that we hold in the family is respecting personal space. It simply means giving personal space for our son. Again, you know, this description came from Miko's personal experience. When asked what he appreciates in our parenting approach, I was surprised. He shared this. He said, "Mommy, you gave me space to grow." Wow. So giving space is really about the importance of having one's own privacy, upholding it, and ensuring that it is respected. It simply means allowing your child, your son or daughter, to have a me time or a breathing space. Even if you value closeness and togetherness, it does not mean we have to be together all the time. It is simply is not possible. Each one also needs time for oneself. Otherwise, we will be choking each other. For example, I have time for my work, just as I have time for the family. I have time for Miko. I have time for my husband. I have time for relaxation, although very little, but precisely appreciating time, how we use time uniquely, including that of our own personal space. And so that space also means giving time to think for oneself, to make decisions on one's own, to make one's own choices, or time to enjoy their own form of leisure, different from ours, different from mine, different from his dad. And so from Miko's feedback, we found that this parenting practice, that of allowing him space, has been very helpful in teaching Miko to respect even our own time, our own private time, our own space. And you can see this, as expressions of positive parenting values. And therefore, because he can reflect on his own choices and make his own decisions, discerning his likes, then he's able to learn his own responsibilities also and being accountable for them. And therefore being able to appreciate his own process of growth. Now, let me get to our third value, sharing God experiences. So we adhere to this, our prayer life, our spiritual life. And this is something we take seriously as a small community. The prayer that I refer to here is not just our individual prayer, our prayer as a person, but as a family, as a small community. We have heard the saying that a family that prays together stays together. That is good. But I believe that there is more to that. There is more to praying together. I think it is not just praying together, but growing together in prayer. Allow me to say a little bit more on this. You know, we started this practice since Miko and his cousins were still kids, were still in their elementary years. I recall we would ask them to articulate their own prayer intentions, desires, or needs. When we would gather together, we would ask them to identify what do they want to pray about. What are their wishes? What are they grateful for? What graces or gifts have they received? And when they did, we thought it was simply amazing because they have the purest of prayer and intentions. And so in this way, they learn to pray, not just with the formula or recited prayers like reciting the Our Father or the Rosary, praying together the Rosary, or saying the Novena, etc. But articulating their own personal prayer from the heart, kumbaga. From here, we have deepened further our prayer into sharing about prayer experiences, our experience of God. I remember Miko was still a very small child, in his elementary years when he asked me in one of our faith sharing conversations. Sabi niya, "Mommy, are you really able to talk to God? Does He really answer you?" And when I said yes, he very solemnly said, "Gusto ko din yan, Mommy. I also want to learn to be able to talk to God." And I said, "That's good. I will teach you. I will teach you, son." Here, I realized that when we share our experiences of God, God becomes real to our children also. So praying then becomes a normal, usual, natural thing. It need not be forced like an obligation. Then they too develop a personal relationship with God. Not just a God up there, not just a God of their parents, but their own personal God, whom they can talk to, whom they can relate to every day, in the everyday of their life. This is where I'd like to pause and give to you the next part to Miko, his own sharing.
Hello everyone, I am Miko. and I'm here to talk about my relationship with my parents. Now, my relationship with my parents is a bit different in the sense that they're not just my parents. They're also my teachers, my advisors, and my counselors, and my friends. They're not only the people who provided me with my basic needs, but they're also people who fulfill the different roles in my life depending on what I needed the most at that time. The teacher to teach me the things I don't know, a friend to tell stories to when I need to express, or a parent when I need the affection of one, the support of one. And this type of relationship was founded from a strong and good communication, not just any type of communication, the type that really values my thoughts and my feelings, one that understands that my opinion matters. Which leads me to my first point. Thinking back, my parents have always listened to me and my opinions. From the simplest thing of asking me what type of food I'd like to eat, ano bang toys yung gusto kong bilhin, or what my side of the story is when they're asking me of such. And in all of those, they really allowed me the space to speak up. They never just told me to stop or ignored me, but they really asked me to share my thoughts and my feelings. But that doesn't necessarily mean they get all the things I want, all the types of food that I talk about, all the types of toys that I ask for. But the mere fact that they listen to me, the act of listening to me really made me feel that they understand me, who I am as a person better. They got to know that side of me just from the very act of listening. And in turn, being listened to also made me feel loved, cared for, and understood. And these simple things were really small building blocks that made me feel empowered and strong. And in turn, helped me make more better decisions for myself and for others, and help me become more mature in who I am as a person and how I handle things. And throughout my own journey, though I'm an only child, my parents never made me feel alone. They were always there for me in all the important parts of my life, but not to the point that they're always there. Not to the point that it's already nakakasakal, kumbaga. But they always were there in a sense that I always felt their support on the times that I needed them the most. Yes, I also craved for other people's attentions, playing with other kids. But one of the biggest things that I'm also thankful for is that growing up, at least I had my cousins with me. And through it all, I remember that even in the busiest of times, the busiest schedule that, for example, kay mommy, she always has a very tight schedule. And I asked her before, mommy, if I was not your son, if hindi mo ako anak, and I wanted to have a meeting with you, when would be the earliest? Ano ba yung time na pwede ako makapag-meeting? And when she checked her calendar, parang after 2 months pa. And that's one of the times I realized, na, wow, I'm so lucky that even with her busy schedule, I always feel prioritized. I always feel that they're there to help me, regardless of the schedule, regardless of their own work. And through that, I also always had a sense of responsibility in me, wherein I don't ask for help all the time, in that I'll only ask when I really need it the most. And I saw that that also gave me a sense of independence in how I live my life. And they gave me the space for it. But at the same time, I know that they're there to know where I am in my own journey. And if ever I needed support, I needed their help, they'll be there. And that gave me a sense of confidence in myself growing up, that regardless of the difficulties of the struggles that I experience while I'm also growing up, that I'll still have them. I'll still have them there. I'll still have their support. And that gave me the assurance, my own space to be who I am. In thinking about that, I realized that they were capable of doing this because when they had me, they were already preparing to have me. They were mature enough and prepared enough to really handle all the questions that I had as a kid. Stupid it may be, lalo na nung very early pa in my age. A lot of questions, a lot of stories that really don't make sense, etc., etc. But their patience, their ability to listen to me, their knowledge that they taught me, all of those was really because they were mature enough and prepared enough for parenthood. They wanted to be parents. And their ability to handle all of the simple and or complicated thing while I was growing up was because of this. Was because they were really planning out their lives to have me, that I'll be there. That doesn't mean that it was a simple thing, of course, parenthood. But again, them being prepared, or at least them being mature enough at this point in time, also gave me the confidence to trust them. Even if, especially during the teenage years where it's really difficult in terms of emotions, handling relationships with other people. But because I also felt that they were confident in all of the things that they were telling me, it gave me the confidence to trust in them. And that trust that we built with each other was really a foundation that helped me gain the confidence that I have now, that helped me build the personality of my personhood. And that's also the reason why I've been able to reach all the heights that I have at this point in my life. So I guess to deepen all of these more from what I've shared and what my mom has shared, at this point, I'll call on once again si Dad to again deepen this conversation more.
Thank you, son. So, my role at this point is to share about building intimacy in the family. So, we value our closeness in the family. We value our relationship, but it is not enough that we are related with each other. That relationship has to be developed. That relationship has to be maintained, has to be nurtured. So how do we do that? So the first thing is that we are expressive with our love and affection. We are expressive in affirming one another. Hindi kami matipid sa pagpapahayag ng pagmamahal sa bawat isa. And even our children have acquired that. So you can see from the picture there, the three cousins, they come from three different sets of families, but they are like siblings themselves. And I would admit that I got this being affectionate sa family ko. I come from a brood of 8 children, and 6 of whom are males. 6 kaming lalaki at 2 babae. But unashamedly, I would admit that even kami ng mga lalaki brothers, we would hug and kiss in public kung magkasalubong kami, halimbawa sa mall, yun ang meeting place, when we kiss each other. Wala yun sa amin. Ganun lang talaga kami. And that was how our parents also were. It is just so reassuring to know that you are loved. Diba? And inversely, it is very disconcerting to feel unconnected, alienated. Okay? So, to sum up this part, we are expressive with our love and affection. To our children, we show affection. We should show affection for our kids. We should compliment them. Kapag meron silang ginagawa na mabuti, binibigyan natin ng due recognition, as it were. There are families, this is sad, there are families who, ang game nila, they try to put each other down. I find that so sad. I mean, they find, of course, these are jokes, but even still, we're supposed to build each other up. We're supposed to build each other up. We celebrate and appreciate our children's efforts and accomplishments, no matter how simple they are. But posting them over Facebook is another thing. Personally, I'm not so much for that. It may be your cup of tea, but not for me. But what is important is that really na maiparamdam natin sa ating anak personally. Minsan nag-greet na tayo sa Facebook pero hindi natin greet in person. So ito, pakitang tao. So and we show our children interests sa kanilang mga interests. These really are expressions of our affection to them, and this really boosts their person, because we are interested in their very own person. The next is, in building intimacy in the family, we make quality of our time together. One of the rules we have at home is no using of phone during meal times. This somehow make meal times remain to be sacred family times. Lately, we realize that we do not have to do things together. I mean, we can be busy meeting the demands of our respective work. For as long as we are present to one another, we are happy. Diba? Hindi kailangan, we are doing this, playing a game together. Not necessarily. We do not need to be entertained. Each other presence is comfort by itself. Nandyan siya. Sapat na yun. Magkakasama kami. Okay na yun. We are comfortable. We are at peace. But how did we reach this point? Paano kami nakarating sa puntong ito? Well, tulad ng sinasabi doon sa input at the beginning, we invested on our time together. We talked and talked and talked and talked. We shared laughter. We bared our souls. We made quality of our time together. So, spend time together. Do things you enjoy together. Identify and make sacred family times. Tulad ng kami, ang hilig namin is kainan. Lagi kaming kumakain. Invest in your relationship, in your friendship. Sabi nga ni Miko kanina, we are not just his parents, we are his friends. Maybe best friends, engage in personal conversations of anything, no holds barred. Of course, the respect is always there, but the thing is, merong intimate na bahagian, merong malalim na pag-uusap, no? And last for this part is laugh together, cry together, think together, play together. In other words, do things together. Okay? Make quality of our time together. And finally, at this point is to build intimacy in the family. Personal authenticity is very important. Meaning, kung ano o sino ako sa bahay, ganun din ako sa labas. Kung ano ako sa labas, ganun din ako sa loob ng bahay. I got this from Miko himself. At a certain point in his college years, I found him in my class. Pagpasok ko sa classroom, klase pala nila yon. So we went through the semester. Years later, when we were preparing for another talk, nabalikan ko yung experience namin sa school. At tinanong ko siya regarding personal authenticity. At sabi ko sa kanya, Nak, kumusta ako bilang teacher sa iyo? Sabi niya, wala lang. Pareho lang. Well, nakikita kita doon sa classroom, you are my teacher. Feel ko din na dad kita, pero it's all the same. I treated him the way I would treat all other he didn't call me dad in class, of course. Although eventually his classmates were calling me Papa Sir, or Sir Papa rather, Sir Dad, But the thing is, what I got from that is that he saw me as authentic as I could be at home and in school. So walang pagkakaiba. And nakita ko rin ito sa kanya. Not personally, but yan, nakikita ninyo po sa slide si Ate V. Ate V was our help. Was kasi she had to go home nang wala nang kasama. Namatay yung tatay niya, wala nang kasama yung nanay niya. So she had to go home. She had to leave us. But this was taken the morning after Miko's college graduation. But one of the stories that Ate V shared to us, kami na mag-asawa, sabi niya, one time, nag-meet up sila ni Miko sa mall. Hindi ko na maalala what it was, but nag-meet up sila sa mall. And Miko was with his friends. And Miko was, hindi siya ikinahiya ni Miko. And tumatak yun kay Ate V. Napakalaking bagay yun kay Ate V. Na hindi siya considered na katulong lang. But of course, Ate V has always been part of the family. She was with us when Miko was 2 months old, right? When Miko was 2 months old. So, ganun talaga siya sa amin. Pero, yun. Miko didn't look at her as katulong. And Ate V's person was also respected. And Ate V was very happy about that. So, ganun. Sa bahay, friends sila, iginagalang siya. At paglabas nila sa bahay, Miko was also very ganun pa rin. She was still respected. Hindi siya kinahiya. And ito nga the morning after ng graduation ni Miko, ayan, inaalay niya ang kanyang mga medalya kay Ate V. And Ate V, as you can see, is very happy. So yun, to sum up itong bahaging ito, attaining personal authenticity, we be ourselves. We be our true selves. Sa bahay, sa labas, lalo na kung kasama natin yung ating mga anak. Be honest and direct. with our children, especially on concerns and issues. Yun. So, ano tayo? Open tayo sa ating mga anak sa pagtugon sa mga bagay-bagay. Kasi babalik at babalik din lang naman yan sa atin kapag tayo ay nagsinungaling sa kanila. Ask them honest questions about their thoughts, their concerns, their difficulties, their pains. And when you do listen to them, di ba? Di ba? Minsan tatanungin natin pagkatapos pag sumasagot na sila, either na puputulin na natin or we're not listening at all. Okay? So we ask questions, honest questions. What is it that they feel? What are their pains? What are their difficulties? And we make ourselves present right there at that moment, listening to them, making them feel really that we authentically care. And engage them in conversation about family, society's issues, and their stance with them. Like ngayon, election, di ba? Pag-usapan natin ang sitwasyon sa bayan, anong kailangan ng bayan. Di ba? So that, yun, magkakasama tayo talaga bilang isang pamilya. I mean, it's a holistic experience. Yung family is really part of a larger society. And then yung larger society ay merong impact sa loob ng ating family. So yun, personal authenticity. And ultimately, for this part, we assure them that we are with them. Unconditional love. Unconditional love. So yun. Okay? So at this point, ibigay ko po sa inyo si Janet to synthesize our session.
So let me just synthesize what we have been sharing with you. From our experience, positive parenting is grounded, strongly founded on family core values. So it's not just any parenting, but grounded on our family culture. You might want to call it that way. On our core values, mga pinapahalagahan ng pamilya. So we've talked about love, one that is attentive, focused, and wholehearted. Respecting personal space, sharing God experiences, respecting opinions, giving guidance, but allowing independence. We prepare and act as mature parents. We express generously our love, our affection, and affirmation. We make quality time, our time together, and we be authentic. On our part, you have asked for tips on positive parenting, and we can say that this is how we did it. This is how positive parenting to us is. Precisely through our core values, our unique family practices. So if we take a look at this, you can see it's talking about three things. One is love. Second, using that love, founding that love in building relationship and in sharing intimacy in the family. So we develop, we grow in love with one another, and in that process, relationship is built and founded on love, and deepening that relationship, that love relationship through intimacy. So you might say our core values would be founded on these three strong pillars of love, relationship, and intimacy. So we thank you for allowing us to share with you our life, our positive parenting experiences.
Diyos
Diyos
mabalos po.
mabalos.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Dominic Verhel de Jos. You can call me Nikki. I believe my aunt and uncle have already introduced me earlier. Today I'm here to talk about depression, detecting it, reacting to it, and what can parents do to help their children in case they experience or exhibit signs and symptoms of depression. Depression is actually one of the most common mental illness experienced by people from all ages and walks of life. And honestly, it is very, very difficult um to distinguish signs and symptoms of depression, especially in teenagers, because teenagers usually express these signs and symptoms differently since they're going through adolescence, their brain goes through rapid growth, so very different siya. Basically when you diagnose it, it's very different diagnosing teenagers and adults. However, I'd like to emphasize that for today's talk, we will be focusing on the possible signs and symptoms that a person with depression may exhibit. We're not here to diagnose because diagnosing mental illnesses is only for mental health professionals. We follow procedure and protocol for that. So I will be showing you a list po of signs and symptoms. These will include emotional and behavioral changes. I'd like to again remind you all that the list is merely a tool that we use to detect depression early. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that if your child fills out the entire or checks the entire list, that doesn't necessarily mean that they already have depression. The diagnosing of depression, as I mentioned, takes a lot of psychological tests and clinical interviews in order to come up with a diagnosis. However, right now I'd like to only talk about the non-technical details of depression. So things to look out for, emotional changes. Usually irritable mood is very, very common. You'll notice they're very cranky, they get angry over the littlest things, they're easily annoyed. So that is very, very common. It's a very common sign of depression in teenagers. Even in adults, irritable mood is actually common. And then demotivation and diminished interest. I think most parents tend to think that this is laziness. Minsan nagkukulong na lang sa kwarto tas ayaw na gumawa ng kahit ano. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're being lazy. It could also mean that they're demotivated from doing anything in their lives or they don't have interest anymore. Diminished interest can also be caused by high sensitivity to criticism. So more often than not, a teenager who for example likes to paint, and they get criticized about the drawing or the painting that they did, they will tend to shy away from painting because they don't want to be criticized or they're afraid to be criticized. Otherwise, kasi mababa na din yung self-esteem nila. And then frequent breakdowns. Yung frequent breakdowns, usually, they have crying spells for no reason. Like, perhaps there's an underlying reason to it. However, hindi nila ma-explain sa'yo kung bakit sila naiyak. Sometimes matitrigger sila, sometimes hindi. More often than not, it's because of academics, like stress, nagpa-pile up, so naiiyak na lang sila. Um, there's that. And then having trouble concentrating. The difficulty with this one is because right now we're doing online classes. So pag online classes, medyo mahirap malaman if they are having trouble concentrating because of the medium na online nga, or ganun nahihirapan talaga sila regardless of it being online or face to face. Usually usually then what happens is because they have trouble concentrating, their grades also diminish. However, there are also cases where yung children nagluluklok sa pag-aaral. So all they do is study, all they do is work on their homework or anything to help distract them from whatever emotions they are feeling that they can't explain. And then one red flag of na emotional change is thoughts of death or suicide. Having thoughts of death or suicide doesn't necessarily mean na gagawin nila, pero napaisip na sila, and that is I know it's a cause for concern, but I would suggest that if your children do exhibit this, it would be better perhaps to see a professional about it, kasi baka if you attempt to do anything on your own, it might trigger more like it might trigger other feelings sa anak nyo. So it would be better na if they do have thoughts of death or suicide na parang in passing na mention nila yon, it's better to seek professional help. And then for behavioral changes po, things to look out for: loss of energy. This is also pretty common. Ang nangyayari is they really can't find the energy to stand up, or like I mentioned, like demotivated sila, gusto lang nila laging nakahiga, gusto nila laging nasa kwarto, nagkukulong, ganon. So that is pretty common. And then we also have insomnia or hypersomnia. So either way, pwedeng hindi sila nakakatulog, they find it very difficult to sleep at night, or they keep on sleeping, like ilang oras sila sa isang araw natutulog. Kahit natulog na sila, they still feel very tired and no energy. So natutulog pa rin ulit sila. Minsan, ano yan, like 16 hours, let's say, mga ganon katagal sila natutulog. Or sometimes for insomnia, ilang hours din silang hindi natutulog or ilang days. Or hirap na hirap silang magstay asleep. And then we have unexplained body aches. Usually, they would complain that their head hurts, may migraine sila, or their stomach hurts, or somewhere in their body there's a pain that they can't seem to explain, or they can't understand where it's coming from. Back then, pre-online classes, you could spot this by usually frequent yung visits nila to the nurse's office, to the clinic. However, syempre ngayon na online classes, siguro magsasabi na lang sila sa inyo at to the parents na masakit yung ulo ko or masakit yung tiyan ko, and they really can't explain why it's happening. And then some other red flags po na behavioral changes: self-harm, having a suicide plan na concrete talaga siya, or attempting na. So for this one, like I mentioned earlier, it's really better to seek professional help for this, kasi mahirap na. Minsan nagiging defensive yung mga anak natin when we call them out. They will feel called out if you mentioned na bakit may mga sugat ka, or bakit nagpa-plan ka na ng ganito. It might have a bad effect if you try to confront them about it. So I think it would be better to leave that to professionals. Usually po, you can call hospitals, especially if nagsa-self-harm na yung ano. You can call hospitals. They have protocols for that. Dadalhin sila sa emergency room, and then they will do everything to prevent any harm from coming to your child. Yun po. So how can we address this situation just in case po your children are exhibiting signs and symptoms of depression, or like they are exhibiting these emotional and behavioral changes? How can we address this? Consent and patience is very important po. So I put consent kasi I think it's very important to acknowledge that some children do not want their parents knowing these things. Maybe they're ashamed, maybe they're scared. So I think it's better to ask them first for permission. Parang tatanungin niyo muna sila, is it okay if you share your thoughts and feelings with me? Is it okay if I ask you about this? Is it okay if I listen? Ganun po, it's better to ask them for their consent muna kasi syempre, we don't want them feeling like you're prying into their private lives kasi syempre, even though they're teenagers, they still deserve privacy. So yun po. Remember to always ask for consent kahit maliit na bagay pa yan. For example, nag-share yung anak nyo and you'd like to hold their hand. Minsan kasi baka ayaw nila magpahawak kasi nanginginig sila or something. So it's better to ask muna for consent na parang, can I hold your hand while you share? Or ganon. So let them open up slowly. Let's be patient po kasi most of the time hindi din nila na-explain yung mga nangyayari or yung mga nafe-feel nila. They will have a hard time articulating their thoughts and emotions, especially to their parents. So patience, like sobrang pasensya lang po talaga yung kailangan nyo. It's best not to get frustrated if your child can't explain what is happening to them kasi syempre if you yourself cannot understand what your child is going through, what more your child? Obviously they're probably feeling scared and anxious na parang, what are all these overwhelming thoughts? What are all these behavioral changes? Why can't I sleep? Yung mga ganong thoughts. Syempre po nahihirapan din sila. And if pilitin natin sila or if ma-frustrate tayo over them not being able to explain, baka lalo nila kayong i-cut off. Kasi very common po ang pag-isolate, ang social isolation. So they will just stay in their rooms. They won't talk to anyone. So as much as possible, we ask for their consent muna, we ask for permission if pwede makinig, and then we let them open up. Let them do let them take the steps forward to you rather than you forcing your way to make them open up. Ganun po. And then very, very important, validation. More often than not, children need to feel validation or they need that reassurance that what is happening is normal and it's human. Kasi, syempre, they're scared and hindi siya, if you tell them na parang, bakit ka nagkakaganyan? Ako nga ganito dati. Parang that is invalidating their current situation. Mahihirapan silang parang feeling nila tuloy may mali sa kanila if gaganunin nyo. So make sure po to remember that all their feelings are valid kahit negative pa yung feelings na yan. Because I know this is very cliche, but it's okay not to be okay. It's human to have negative emotions. We're not built to always be happy or to always be positive. That's toxic positivity, which I will talk about later then, na hindi pwedeng puro lang tayo positive, puro happy. Kailangan din po natin i-acknowledge that we also have bad days. We have negative emotions because that's what makes us human. So yun po, never compare their situation with anyone else na parang, bakit ka may depression or bakit ka nagpapakita ng mga ganitong signs, yung anak nga ni ganon. Never do that po. Otherwise, hindi na sila mag-open up sa inyo. So validation is very, very important. when your child feels like validate yung feelings nila, mas mag-open up yan. Okay. And then let's talk about toxic positivity. So this is from GMA News. The source is Tanglao Mental Health. I'll just read it for you. How to avoid toxic positivity. Instead of saying you'll get over it, you can say it's hard, but I believe in you. Don't be so negative. Don't never say this po. It's okay to feel bad. Kasi, yun like I mentioned earlier and like I emphasized na it's normal for us as humans to have negative emotions, to have bad days. So, okay lang po yun. Just make sure to tell them that na okay lang na ma-feel bad. Okay lang naman na may negative emotions ka. And then, never tell them to always look on the bright side because, like I said, ano siya, we're not built to always be happy. Hindi naman pwedeng palagi na lang positive, palagi na lang masaya. And then failure is not an option. I think most of us deem failure as a bad thing. However, in most cases, and in my opinion, failure is really a part of growth. The more you fail, the more you find stepping stones na parang, okay, I failed this. What can I do to change it? Hindi siya normal. I mean, it's very, very normal for us to fail kasi syempre, we're not built perfect. We weren't born and then automatically alam na natin lahat ng bagay. So think happy thoughts, never tell them this. Kasi if you tell them to think happy thoughts, parang in-invalidate mo yung feelings of sadness nila. Na parang, wag ka nang sad, kailangan happy ka lang. So, try to avoid this po. You can, like the poster says, instead of saying think happy thoughts, you can say things can get really tough, but I'm here for you. So, yun din po, it would be really, really good if you could show them or reassure them that you're here throughout the entire ordeal or throughout the entire experience kasi syempre sila din are very they're very worried as well, of course, kasi yun nga, they're the ones experiencing all these overwhelming thoughts and emotions and changes. So syempre kailangan nilang ma-reassure the feelings nila are valid and that you are there with them throughout the entire thing. And then, how can we address, promote health? Make sure they eat and sleep properly. Ito po, parang, as much as possible, sabayan natin sila kumain, and we say goodnight, like bago sila matulog, make sure they eat and sleep. Praise and encourage good behavior. Hindi naman, let's try to avoid getting super mad at them if they fail or if they did something wrong. Let's try to avoid that. However, kapag they do something good naman, let's try to praise and encourage that para naman yun yung mag-stick sa utak nila na if I do good, I'm going to be praised and encouraged, diba? And then strategize together. Ito very important. Syempre, you can't just tell your child what to do. You have to help them come up with strategies on their own, like promoting healthy coping mechanisms. Like, you can't tell them, because for example, I read online na what the good coping mechanisms are exercise, dapat mag-exercise ka. Hindi po pwedeng ganun. Kailangan kasama mo yung child mo na nag-uusap kayo. For example, preference niya is to sing. Yun, that could be a coping mechanism. You can tell them na, oh, ganito will help you with singing, or halimbawa, they want to play a musical instrument. Kasi treatment plans or like building healthy coping mechanisms, hindi siya universal in a way. It has to be very unique to each person. So just because the internet says na exercising or like kailangan may sleep schedule, may healthy sleep schedule, or dapat naka-schedule lahat. That doesn't necessarily mean that it works for everyone po. Usually, yun nga, like I said, it's coping mechanisms or coping strategies are unique to every individual. So you have to strategize together with your child, know what they want to do and what they don't want to do, and then never force, only encourage. Okay. And then very, very important is to just listen. Um, but when I say listen, I mean attentively listening, like active listening. Yung andun ka talaga, being present, being there in the moment, and um just just trying to understand what they're going through, never invalidating what they're saying, only encouraging them to share. Kasi the more they share, the more na you'll find out eventually kung ano yung mga nangyayari and why they're feeling this way. So it's really, really good to just listen to your child. Pero remember to ask for consent, as I mentioned, na parang, will you be okay with sharing? Is it okay if I listen to you? Yung mga ganon. I think Auntie Nanit and Uncle Ringo also mentioned na when raising kids, it's very important to be present, to be there for your children and making time for them. So ito, yung I made it just listen kasi parang it encompasses a lot of things na being attentive is listening. Being there and present is listening. Like, just being there for your child. That's very, very important. And then I'd also like to talk about my personal experience with depression. Very short, ano lang siya, because I also want to talk about what my parents did to reassure me, and maybe it will also inspire you to, just in case your children goes through the same thing, it would also be helpful for you. So I mentioned that I think my aunt and uncle mentioned that I am taking masters from De La Salle University. So I was taking masters from De La Salle University, but I'm currently on a leave of absence because I got diagnosed with depression last year. Yeah, 2021. And then I got diagnosed, and we were told that it would be better for me to take a break from school because that was one of the major stressors. Initially, I was very, very afraid to talk to my parents because I was worried they would get mad. But what my mom did was she told me na I understand, and so my mom kasi is in academe, so syempre for her, education is very important. So I was also very worried na, what if I told her na I have to stop going to school kasi yun yung sinasuggest ng psychiatrist ko. So syempre, I was very worried and anxious about her reaction. But she was very calm about it. She's like, it's okay, I understand. Let's try to work things out. And like, if you really can't go back to school, it doesn't really mean na failure ka na. So, yun, I think just having that reassurance from my parents na they're there for me and they will love me no matter what. It really went a long way, and it's been very, very helpful so far. I'm currently going through several therapy sessions and doing I do have medicine for it, and I'm happy to share that I have been improving a lot. And yeah, hopefully this short personal experience of mine that I shared, and like what my mom and I talked about, will be helpful for you and your child in case the same thing happens. So I really hope it helps. That's why I shared it. And as I mentioned, I have been seeing a psychologist and psychiatrist. I'm under co-management from a clinic. And that's why I'd like to use that as a transition to it's okay to ask for professional help. Um, I think there's still a stigma surrounding going to surrounding seeking help from mental health professionals na uso yung kapag pumunta ka and pumunta ka sa clinic for ng psychologist, ibig sabihin baliw ka na agad. There's still that stigma. However, I'd like to reassure you that when you go to ask professional help, it doesn't necessarily mean that your child will be diagnosed agad. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a procedure and protocol with regarding to diagnosis. We take a lot of time and effort into giving psychological tests and clinical interviews para mag-diagnose. Hindi naman siya necessarily pag pumunta ka doon, madadiagnose ka na agad. It's also very helpful to go kasi if you're at a loss for what to do and you don't know how to help your child, sorry, and you don't know how to help your child, usually po alam naman ng psychologist or psychiatrist yung best thing to do. Usually we're just there, we as mental health professionals are just there to sort of piece together the thoughts and emotions na very overwhelming for the child, and we can use that to explain the situation better to them para maano naman sila, para ma-reassure sila that this is normal, and to make them understand, to help them understand na the things you're going through are not as scary as it seems. And it's very important then kasi we can create treatment plans for your child na specific siya, very unique to each individual yung treatment plans. So it's not going to be, so it's okay, it's very okay to ask for professional help if you're at a loss. Minsan nga kahit you're not at a loss and you just need help to understand, you can visit a counselor or a psychologist and psychiatrist just so you can have some sort of education when it comes to handling these situations. Yun po. So I've listed down some several crisis or suicide helplines if ever kailangan nyo po. Because these centers will be most of the centers are open 24/7 just in case of emergencies. They also provide adequate mental health care. But like I mentioned, if yung mga red flags po and you don't know who to call, your local hospital will have protocols for that po, just in case your child are exhibiting the red flags like self-harm, thoughts of death or suicide, and creating plans na po or attempting suicide. Yun po. But I put the crisis or suicide helplines just in case you want to talk to someone like immediately, kasi yun nga po, they're open 24/7 to help with people who are in that situation. And then other materials that might help. So there are movies like Inside Out, Dolphin Tale that you can watch. They talk about how usually children will have several different emotions in one day, and like that it's okay to have these emotions, that it's normal, it will make you feel validated. Also, it will help in sort of providing you with an entertaining way to see an entertaining way to study, to study mental health. So in movies like Inside Out and Dolphin Tale are very good materials to watch. And then I also put in links from a video on YouTube which you can use, which shows 10 warning signs of depression in teenagers, just in case you need to refresh, or you want a more in-depth um a more in-depth uh talk on warning signs. And then an article that could help parents out. This article is, I read it. It's very helpful. It gives you concrete and detailed plans, or list of possible things to do to help your child, or to help you understand your child's situation. Yun po. I really hope my talk was very educational. If you have any more questions po, I think you can reach out to my aunt and uncle, and I'll be very willing to answer more questions. Thank you so much po for listening. And yes, I hope you had a fun time listening to the talk. And yun po, remember to listen to your child and validate their feelings. Thank you!
Thank you so much, our dear resource speakers, for a comprehensive and well-informed presentation of the topic discussed. Let's move on to the second session of this webinar. For the introduction of guest speakers, let's have Ma'am Diana M. Reyes, Solvers Club Advisor from Mathematics Department.
Our next speaker has been in the corporate world for almost 20 years. With Procter & Gamble Philippines, Coca-Cola Philippines, and Beverage Partners Worldwide Asia, based in Bangkok. In 2007, she and her family came back to the Philippines and joined Acumen, a strategy consultancy firm. At present, she is now the managing director of Acumen, a Makati-based strategy consultancy and company, where she has led projects for major local companies as well as overseas research on the different generations, particularly the Gen Z and Gen Y, on their psyche, needs, and media habits. She and her husband Jingo have 5 children with ages ranging from 13 to 26. They are also active parent coordinators in their children's schools and are also facilitators for parenting courses after attending several congresses and seminars related to family and parenting. Dear parents, teachers, ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our speaker, Ma'am Pauline Fermin.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to Kamsur National High School for inviting me in this parental webinar. My name is Pauline Fermin, and today I'm going to talk to you about parenting the digital generations. Allow me to start by introducing my family to you. This is my husband, Jingo, and we have 5 children. Ryan, who's now 27 years old, Rafi, who is 26 years old. They are what you call millennials. And then Paula, who's 21 years old, Patty, who's 18, and Nathan, our bunso, who is 15 years old. So sometimes they say, ako daw yung bunso kasi I'm one of the smallest ones. So this is our family. So as I mentioned, Ryan and Rafi are millennials, and Paula, Patty, and Nathan are what we call the Gen Zers. So before I continue, let me just put out a sort of a disclaimer here. No? So I'm not a medical expert, so I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't call myself also a parenting expert. I'm not a psychologist. And I do not have all the answers for everyone's specific circumstances. But I'm here to share with you all that we have learned about this topic. No? So my husband and I had felt also the same challenges as you're feeling right now. And what we had done was to attend a lot of parenting seminars. And we read a lot of books in order for us to learn how to parent these digital generations. So in addition to that, no, I am the head of a consulting firm in Makati. And in this part of our work is to actually do a lot of research about the Filipino generations. So in the past 7 years, we've been conducting research among these generations. We'll start with what we now call the Gen Z. They're the ones who are aged 4 to 19 years old, and we call them digital mavens. Ibig sabihin, ang galing talaga nila when it comes to digital technology. When you give them a gadget, parang fish in water, alam nila paano gamitin. Then we have Gen Y, or what we call the millennials. They're around 20 to 35 years old. Some of you might be in this generation. They're the Gen Y millennials, and they're digital natives because sila yung lumaki together with technology as it was developing. Then we look at also Gen X, who are 36 to 49 years old. Ako, Gen Xer ako. No? And we call ourselves the digital immigrants. Ibig sabihin nun, parang yung mga immigrants na kaibigan natin na nasa ibang bansa. They go to a country and they migrate there. And even as much as they try to learn the language, to learn the culture, parang hindi talaga naman sila native doon sa lugar na yan. And that's what we call, digital immigrants. So parang tayo, we try to learn and be comfortable with technology, with all of these, new applications or apps, pero hindi talaga tayo native doon. Unlike the Gen Y na talagang, that's where they were born into, and that's where digital technology, lumaki sila. And finally, the baby boomers, those that are older than 50, that we call digital tourists. Ibig sabihin, parang happy sila na pupunta sila sa digital world, magbibisita, pero pag sawa na sila, aalis sila, no? Babalik sila sa dyaryo or or magazine ganyan or libro, no? But when they are there in that place, no, kailangan nila ng tour guide. So ang mga tour guide nila usually mga anak nila or yung mga apo. So we had been in our company, we had been researching all of these, the psyche, how they think, ganyan. And I'm going to be sharing some of the insights from that, as well as our own personal experience ni Jingo in terms of parenting these digital generations. So in addition, we also research among the Filipinos, and we're finding that may mga commonalities, and these are enduring truths. The first one is love for family. Kasi malalim yung pagmamahal sa pamilya, which is a big blessing for us, as parents. We've talked to a lot of teenagers, Gen Ys, and in focus group discussions is a kind of research, and pagpakikinggan natin sila talaga, we saw that there really is a real love for the family, for parents, malakas yung faith natin, and we are very resilient. That's also good news, So we, especially during the pandemic, kahit na maraming pagsubok, we held on to our faith, and know that God has the best plans for us, whatever happens. There's joy and cheerfulness. Lagi tayong nakangiti kahit na may pinagdadaanan. merong lalim ng kasayahan in our hearts, no? There's that joy and cheerfulness. And finally, very, very important for us, yung education. As parents will do anything, will do everything to support our children in their education. So, mag-throwback muna tayo bago tayo tumuloy, no? So, just want to tignan nyo nga, erase nyo nga yung hand nyo kung natatandaan nyo ito. At natatandaan nyo kung bakit may pencil. Bakit may pencil? Kasi di ba pagka yung cassette nagbuhol na ganito, gagamitin natin yung pencil para ayusin. No? Yan, natatandaan nyo po ba yan? Pero ngayon, sino sa inyo na gumagamit ng Spotify? So dati kung bibili tayo ng cassette or CD, kung ano lang yung mga kanta na nandoon sa CD or sa cassette, yun lang yung mapapakinggan natin. Now, sa Spotify, parang isa siyang malaking jukebox. Natatandaan niyo yung jukebox, di ba? Dati yung mga malalaking machine na ganyan na jukebox, pupunta ka sa isang restaurant or isang shop, tapos may jukebox doon. Itong Spotify, para siyang jukebox times a million kasi sobrang daming songs na nandoon at your fingertips. Kahit na nasaan ka, kahit anong song, i-search mo lang sa Spotify, mapapakinggan mo na. Hindi mo na kailangan bumili ng cassette at saka CD. Oh, sino sa inyo nakakatanda nung telepono? Ganito pa yung itsura. Di ba? Idadial mo ganyan. Hintay mo pag bumalik. Diba? Either, red or black. Tapos pagka pumunta ka sa sari-sari store o dun sa kanto, meron mas malaki, ganyan. 3.25 yung kailangan. O di kaya yung sulat, no? Ganyan yung itsura noon. Magsusulat tayo para lang makibalita sa mga kamag-anak na nasa abroad or nasa probinsya. Pero ngayon, ganito na. Facebook, Viber, WhatsApp, Messenger, and then instantaneous. Pag nagpadala ka ng message, kahit na nasaan yung kamag-anak mo or kaibigan mo, marireceive nila kaagad kahit na nasaan sila sa buong mundo. No? Talagang malaki ang pagkakaiba, no? So, ang conclusion dito, nag-improve naman talaga yung buhay natin. Technology has really improved our lives, no? The digital banking, for example, or all of these apps na available, it really has improved our lives. No dispute about that. However, and that's why we are here in this talk, no, it affects the minds, bodies, and souls of our children. And that's what we will tackle today, no? So let me dive into a little bit more description of the Gen Z first. They're currently, 4 to about 19 years old. Definitely, yung mga anak nyo nasa high school are part of this group, no? They're going through adolescence and middle childhood. So let's look back lang at tignan lang natin ang kanilang lifeline. No? So this generation has been born digital. Anong ibig sabihin nun? By the time they were born, nag-i-exist ng Wi-Fi. So they've never known a world without Wi-Fi. No? So, hindi na kagaya natin na naabutan pa natin walang Wi-Fi noon, telepono lang. Tapos, nung nagtatrabaho na tayo, that's when the internet actually, came into being. Pero before, wired pa yan. Meron parang telephone wire, sasaksak mo sa computer, and then meron ka pang idadial kasi hintayin mo pa, tut, 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 and then yung sound na, natatandaan niyo ba yun? Na kailangan marinig muna natin yon para malaman natin na nakakonect tayo. Yung mga Gen Z, hindi na nila inabutan yon. Nung pinanganak sila, in fact, Wi-Fi, tapos meron ng Facebook, meron ng Twitter, at yung mga telepono, wala ng, buttons. Lahat smartphone na maraming apps, no? What are the challenges? Given this, ano yung mga challenges sa atin itong sitwasyon na to? First, ang daming information that's readily available to them. No, parang lahat ng kailangan na nilang maitanong about life, about studies, i-google lang nila. And makukuha lang agad yung information. Ang daming pumapasok na information sa kanila. Second, 24/7. Parang araw-araw, kahit anong oras ng gabi, pwede silang ma-entertain at maging occupied, no? They have YouTube, they have Facebook, they have Wattpad, Netflix, you name it, they can be entertained, any time of day, any day of the week. Hindi kagaya before, in our, olden times, no? Kailangan kung ano lang ang programa sa TV, at ano lang yung mga channels na available sa atin. Pero ngayon, sa telepono lang nila, they will get entertainment, and, anytime. So there it has been, unfortunately, actually may effect to sa brains, particularly video games. And I'm going to show you here, some of the, if you will see at the bottom, the sources of this research, marami actually. And their conclusion is that video games are as addicting as drugs. So it really has an impact on the brains of our children. So, and boys in particular are 4 times more likely to be addicted than girls. And the vulnerable stage is between 8 to 9 years old. So, ano yung symptoms ng pathologic gaming? So, I want to distinguish between normal na, or healthy levels of gaming, because even all of my, sons and even my husband are into gaming. So, in the same way, I guess that the girls are into K-drama or K-pop. Pero ang babantayan natin, yung pathologic, ibig sabihin yung talagang medyo kakaiba na and medyo mag-worry tayo. And I'll give you what are the signs of pathologic gaming. First, they have trouble paying attention in class. Parang sobrang nang hindi makafocus kasi at hindi maka-pay attention sa klase nila. Second, they spend increasing amounts of time and money on video games in order to feel the same level of excitement. Parang dati, kung excited sila, yung certain amount of video games na nilalaro sila, okay na. Excited sila. Pero, kalaunan, parang para ma-feel yung same level of excitement, dapat mas marami pang video games sila laro nila, mas gagastos pa sila. Which is a hallmark of actually drug addiction. Irritability or restlessness when play is scaled back. Ibig sabihin, when we stop them from playing or when we tell them, okay, limit na, nagagalit sila or they're restless, no? So, kumbaga parang withdrawal symptom to na pag pinatigil natin sila, naiirita na sila or nagagalit. Fourth, they use video play to escape from problems. No? So again, similar to drugs, no? Parang the reason why they take drugs is because they want to escape. Fifth, they would skip doing their homework or schoolwork to spend more time at the controller. Sixth, lying about the length of playing time. Pag tinan natin, ilang oras ka na naglalaro, sabihin lang, isang oras lang, pero nakita natin maghapon naglalaro pala. No? And finally, stealing. Pag nagnanakaw na ng games or money para lang makapaglaro. So these are some of the symptoms that we need to watch out for. And it's really been proven dito, no? On the right, you will see all of the researches that had been conducted. I actually just listed here 8, but there are more, except that I don't have space anymore in the chart. Of the researches that prove that the more time a child spends playing video games, the less likely he will do well in school. So there is an impact to academic performance of playing too much video games, and especially pag maging pathologic na. So mamaya, pag-usapan natin, okay, anong solution? We'll go into that later. Now, for girls naman, yung time that they spend messaging friends on Snapchat and Instagram can be just as dangerously addictive for teenagers as drugs and alcohol. So the same, no? So hindi lang boys, actually girls. Ang girls naman, ang challenge is social media. And it's been found that the constant use of digital technology is hampering the students' attention spans and ability to persevere in the face of challenging tasks. Bakit? Kasi sa video games or sa digital, mabilis lahat eh. Pagka meron silang ginawa, merong instantaneous na action or benefit or parang meron silang points, no? So medyo hindi sila, therefore parang sanay sila na mabilis or merong instant gratification. So it's hampering their ability to persevere. Huh? Then this leads us to in relation to that point I mentioned earlier, no, it's now the age of impatience. Mga impatient na ang mga anak natin, no, laging gusto nila kung ano yung mabilis. So, and it also have changed the way we connect and communicate, di ba? As I showed in the throwback kanina, no? Dati, ganun yung pag-communicate natin. Ngayon, sabay-sabay ang mga chats natin. Maraming group chats na maraming Viber, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, mga anak natin nasa Discord, simultaneous yung communication. And it's all through screen. In fact, nahihirapan sila kung face-to-face lang pakipag-communicate. So these are all the options of messaging, no? And then many options are also on social media. Isa pa, maraming mga codes. So may mga, pag nagsusulat sila, may mga codes. So these are just examples, no? TBH, to be honest, or SLR, sorry, late reply, or IMO, in my opinion. Yeah, meron pa silang mga codes na Finsta or fake Instagram. So may mga codes na ganito na actually kailangan nating i-google as parents. Ano ba ibig sabihin itong mga to, no? LOL. Is it laughing out loud or lots of love? Yung ganyan, no? So may mga codes rin. So this is how our communication has been evolving. Reality though, during this pandemic is that we are thrust and forced into learning and working online. Nabuti, unti-unti, bumabalik na tayo to face-to-face. But for the past 2 years, our children had to be, online even for their classes. May effect rin on the family life, no? It reduces the time that parents and kids spend together. Medyo magiging weak ang attachment ng teenagers to parents, and we cannot seem to penetrate our children's universe. Parang sinasabi natin, may sarili siyang mundo. At ang mundo niya, parang naka-confine lang sa telepono o sa computer. Now, unfortunately, also, the worst part is that there is such a thing as a dark web, where there's pornography, drugs, pedophilia, and even suicide. No? So, meron talagang parte na napaka-dangerous, and where all of these things happen. Now, ban technology, however, is not the answer. Hindi natin pwede sabihin, itigil na yan, tanggalin mo na yung computer, tanggalin mo yung telepono. And I think the pandemic had just illustrated for us specifically na, without technology, we would not have been able to survive, continue on with life, during the pandemic. So it is not the solution. As we saw, no, the technology has many benefits naman. And an important thing is that technology is here to stay. It is now part of our life, but parents are more so here to stay. So there's a bright spot, in fact, in all of these. As I mentioned in our researches, consistently, they value family. Our digital generations, the millennials and the Gen Zers, they value family, and parents do make a difference. So, but we need to act more than ever. Our children need us. Hindi tayo pwedeng mag-relax. We really need to put in effort as parents because they need us. So, now let's go into, okay, ano gagawin natin? Parang, nakaka-depress naman ito, no? Parang nakakatakot. But, okay, there are things we can do. And I'll start with some principles muna. First is to understand and empathize with their struggles. kailangan natin intindihin saan ba sila nanggagaling. And on this, particularly yung mga nasa high school na yung mga adolescent, no? All adolescents, no? Like you and I, when we were at their age, we went through a lot. No? It's in fact the most difficult life stage because it's the transition between being a child to being an adult. And all science point to the fact that may struggles talaga, may challenges talaga. And what are these? One is freedom versus control. They want to break away from us, necessarily so, because they're no longer Maria's daughter or Pedro's son. They're no longer, yung identity nila need to be their own person. They need to be Rosalie, they need to be Pauline, they need to be Ryan, they need to be their own identity. And that necessitates a peeling away from us parents. So they want freedom, but us parents still want control. Sabihin natin, ako anak, hindi mo pa kaya. Naku, yung baby ko, kung anong mangyari sa kanya, ano ba yung ginagawa? So we ourselves need to go through the transition of slowly letting them go. No? And it's hard. It's hard. I can tell you, 5 kids. It's hard, especially for us moms, kasi ito yung mga baby ko pa to. Gusto kong yakap-yakapin. And yet, gusto nila may sarili na silang mundo, may sariling identity. Second, they're going through self-esteem issues. Remember when you and I were teenagers, tayo rin very conscious tayo about, bakit siya maraming mas magaganda kaysa sa akin, maraming mas matalino, mas matangkad, parang ako worthless, hindi ako magaling, hindi ako maganda, mahirap lang kami, ganyan. So parang whereas the identity, as the adults being formed, the ego is actually also being formed, and there's a lot of questioning that's happening actually in their minds as to their worth and how much value they have, And in relation to that, they get a lot of signals and a lot of affirmation from peers, not from parents firstly, but from peers. So they need that affirmation because they need to answer the question, who likes me, who wants me, Nandyan ang parents, so I don't want to discount the fact that parents still has an important role, and in fact, bottom line, they will get their affirmation from parents. But friends and peers become important. So first, kailangan natin maintindihan saan sila nagagaling. Second, we need to have a positive but vigilant attitude towards technology. We cannot demonize technology. We cannot say, ano ba naman kasi yan? Pa-computer ka ng computer, maghapon. Ganon. So it creates additional tension between us and our children. Kasi para sa kanila, yun yung mundo nila, yun yung kinagis na nila. They don't know of any other world. Aside from that, in terms of communication and how they do, their work, how they connect with friends, samantalang tayo, iba yung kinalakihan natin. But we cannot demonize, hindi nila kasalanan that by the time they were born, meron ng technology, di ba? So we need to have that positive pero vigilant na attitude. We have to remember that technology is a double-edged sword. It is an enabler, like what I mentioned earlier, di ba? Na parang, wow, ngayon, ang daming benefits talaga sa buhay natin. But it's also a destroyer. Double-edged siya. And the analogy I'm gonna be using is that of a kitchen knife. Kutsilyo sa kusina. Pag ginamit ng tama, can actually it's an important tool to prepare fantastic, yummy meals for the family. But if used for the wrong intention, it can kill somebody. So similar to that, paano gamitin and who uses it, and how the person who uses it, whether they know how to use it well, or instead of how to use it to destroy himself, that is going to be the key. Last principle is to make your relationship with them your top life priority. I know that we parents have a lot on our plate. We work, we take care of them, especially yung mga work from home na ngayon. Aside from our work, we have to take care of help them in their studies. Marami rin tayong pinagdadaanan, maraming tayong problema, and then dadagdag pa sila. But, and ito yung pakiusap ko that, we really have to put them as one of our priorities. It will entail a lot from us, but as I mentioned, we need to act, and our children need us. So, and before I go into the solutions, let's talk about what is it that we hope to achieve. Do we want them to live the life that we had before, na walang gadgets, and then pag naglalaro tayo sa hapon, for example, hindi sa gadgets kundi na sa labas, gano'n? No. Kasi nga, hindi na natin maibabalik yung kapanahunan natin. What do we hope to achieve? We hope to ensure that they are physically and morally safe. We need to make sure that they avoid the risks that I mentioned earlier, the addiction, the risk to the pornography, suicide, depression, that they develop to their full potential. Hindi lang ang ambisyon nila is to be a gamer all their life or to be a YouTuber. They have a potential to be a great doctor, a great engineer, a great teacher, di ba? And finally, we do want to develop them into God-fearing, strong character adults. These are our objectives. So what's our action plan? And I'm going to share with you 4 areas. Now, it's a 4-pronged action plan. First, set boundaries. Second, form their character. Third, have a great and strong parental relationship with them. And finally, prayer. All of this is wrapped under what we call deliberate authoritative parenting. It's a style of parenting na mahal natin sila, we provide all of the emotional support, but we set high standards. So that means na it's not a permissive parent, bigay hilig is what I call it. Yung mga bigay hilig, sige na, kung anong gusto mo, bibigay lang natin. Sige, kung gusto niyo maglaro, maghapon, okay lang. Research has proven this parenting style does not work. The second type naman, the opposite, is authoritarian. Parang martial law sa bahay. Kung ano ang sinabi ko, yun ang masusunod. Pero, di ba, dati yung mga lola natin, gano'n, no? Authoritarian. There's no, the children don't feel the warmth and the love. It's all about strong rules. That's also not effective. The third type of parenting style is indifferent. Parang, I don't care. Parang, sige, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Kung anong gusto ninyo. Walang rules, but also walang pakialam. This is the most dangerous actually, no? And I think all of you are not like that, because if you are watching this parental webinar, that means that you are involved parents. And the 4th parenting style is this, authoritative parenting. There's a lot of research that have been done about these 4 parenting styles. If you'd like to Google and find out more about it, you can Google now. But all of these will need to be within itong 4 na action points natin, all within a parenting style that is deliberate, authoritative. So let's go through this one by one. No? I'll start with parental relationship. As I mentioned earlier, we need to make our relationship with them our top life priority. So a few things I'll cover: be a model and have that loving relationship. First and foremost, we need to be the example. If we want our children to have limits in the use of our phones, we have to be the first one to put it down. Pagkatapos ng trabaho natin and it's time for family meals, for example, we're the first one to close our computers and put down our phone. This is tough, especially if you are part of the digital generation. If you yourself are millennial, then nakasanayan mo na gano'n, no? Nakikita ng mga anak mo. And as we know, we cannot ask from our children to do something that we ourselves are not doing. Here, I'll show you, no, a post before of a grade 2 teacher. Just to illustrate how our children are actually beginning to, not like the fact that we are always on our phone. So she said that, she asked her students about an invention that they wish had not been created and why. And the answer was of many actually of the students, I don't like the phone because my parents are on their phone every day. A phone is sometimes a really bad habit. I hate my mom's phone and I wish she never had one. So it's actually time for us to do an examination of conscience to see, baka naman kaya sila ganon, addicted, baka naman I'm showing bad example. How many hours do we spend ourselves on entertainment, maybe yung K-drama, baka nag-Netflix binge tayo until early in the morning. Are we hooked into Facebook? Are we hooked into our computers and YouTube? And even when they need to talk to us already, and when we need to spend time with our families. So, that's the first thing we need to examine. Next is we need to be emotionally connected to them. And we need to bear in mind that what they need most from us would be coaching, support, good example, and most of all, understanding. So as I mentioned earlier, parang the first principle, understand and empathize with their struggles. We need to coach them pagka nahihirapan sila, to support, to let them know na kakampi nila tayo in their struggles. And that means that there are times na pagka may emotionally distraught sila when they're going through something, hindi tayo magagalit, magsisermon. Maaari ngang may mali silang ginawa, pero at the moment na they're going through an emotional meltdown, the most important thing during that time is to show that we love them, we support them, we're there for them. Pagka the emotion is already settled and stable, that's the time that we actually correct them if necessary, but not at the moment when they are going through something really tough or painful. There is one eternal and undeniable truth, that children need their parents' time and attention. Families thrive when parents have strong, healthy relationships with their children. So this is one of our priorities, to give them time, to give them attention, to have that strong relationship with them. And how do we do this? Through words and actions every single day. Medyo kailangan natin bantayan kung ano ba yung nasasabi natin na words. Are we helping them in their positive self-esteem? Or tayo mismo yung unang nagpo-put down sa kanila? Tayo ba yung nagsasabing, ang tanga-tanga mo naman kasi, ang bobo-bobo naman, ba't mo naman kasi ginawa yan? Those are very hurting words, and especially coming from us parents. So let's choose the words, that we say, and the tone. May kaibahan yung, hindi! Ilang beses ko dapat sinabi sa'yo, compared to a calmer, anak, hindi pwede kasi ganito, ganyan. So you will see, nasa words natin and sa tono kung paano tayo mag-form ng relationship with them, how they will feel that we love them, that we support them, that we're there for them. And our actions. And the actions, what are those actions? If they need attention, we give the attention. It means, yun nga, titigil natin ginagawa natin kasi pag sinabi lang, pwede pa kitang makausap, mami, may nangyari sa school or meron akong ganito, may problema ako. As in, binibigyan ba natin sila ng pansin? Nakikinig ba tayo talaga? O di kaya nagko-computer pa rin tayo? Sige, ano yun? Diba? Iba eh. So those actions, or even a simple, embracing them before they go to sleep, or wishing them luck, or patting their backs pagka may magandang nagawa. So those are small gestures and actions every day that we can do in order to form that strong, loving relationship with them. And next is to truly know them through one-on-one talks. Talagang kilalanin natin sila. One-on-one, no? Sa family namin, we have one-on-one dates. Nag-date kami. Lalabas kami or during the pandemic, dito lang sa bahay, sa likod, bakuran, mag-order ng McDonald's or Jollibee, hindi kailangan magastos. But really spending time one-on-one and magkwentuhan. Parang the way we would go out with our friends, kwentuhan lang. Same thing, no? With our children. We ask them, what was the highlight of their day, of their week? Sino yung mga kaibigan nila? What makes them happy? What makes them sad? What bothers them? Ano yung dreams nila? No? So, and again, make sure lang that when you have these one-on-one talks, it's really a genuine desire to listen and know them. Hindi yung, bakit ganyan yung grade mo? Ano bang nangyari dito? Hindi ganon, no? So it has to be truly a date where, parang nung nagdi-date pa kayo, nung kayo'y binata at dalaga na parang very sweet and really open up the conversation. And importantly, really let them know you are there for them. No matter how much, they don't seem to appreciate you, they do. No matter how much they shut the door on you, they really appreciate you. Trust me, for those who don't have adult children yet, trust me, kahit na anong parang kontrabida tayo ngayon sa buhay nila or ayaw nila tayong pakinggan, believe me that eventually they will come back and they will appreciate all of those things that you had done. Babalik at babalik rin. So kahit na parang pumapasok sa isang tenga, lalabas sa isa, still tell them you love them, you're there for them, and anytime na kailangan nila kayo, that you will be there to help them out. So during this pandemic in particular, for those of you who have younger children, compared to adolescents, younger children actually demand more attention from their parents and they need the physical presence to engage with them in indoor play and related activities. So we should devote time to these younger children with undivided positive attention and reassurance. There's a lot of anxiety happening actually among the children right now because of the pandemic. It's a good thing we're getting out of this, but there may be remnants of this anxiety. And nothing can replace the attention or the benefit from the attention and time that we give them. So just want to reiterate that being connected through technology may make sense, but the human heart will always long for the deeper connection of person to person. And we need to have this connection with our children. It's not too late to start. You might be thinking, oh, no, paano yan? Parang distant na yung anak ko sa akin. It's never too late to start. Start lang with, again, one-on-one date. Samahan nyo, gusto niya mag-shopping or kain kayo sa labas. It doesn't have to be expensive or fancy. Maaaring halo-halo lang sa kanto or maglakad lang kayo, mag-bike together or read together, whatever it is, pero 1:1, dalawa lang kayo para undivided attention to a particular child. And you will see slowly their hearts will open up, and that connection person to person is so important to have, especially if they are in high school, in adolescence, because this is one of the most risky stages, as I explained earlier, because you're going through quite a lot. So on the foundation of that parental relationship, we'll go now into the 3 other action points. So again, to reiterate, the foundation is strong parental relationship achieved through deliberate, authoritative parenting style. Now let's go into the next action point. Mold and strengthen their inner compass, their character. There are 3 traits that are absolutely critical. First, And sometimes we call these virtues or character traits self-control, self-mastery, or temperance. No, this is just one trait. Iba-iba lang yung pangalan, but it's the same. It's temperance, ability to control and to master oneself. Why is that? Because self-regulation is the only way for any of us to ultimately be masters of our digital world. The digital world will not stop from being so fast, so pervasive. I mean, the speeds at which technology is being developed is just so fast. We will never be able to keep up with it. And therefore, the only way for us to be master and to navigate our lives in a way na hindi tayo at risk, tayo or yung mga children natin hindi at risk, is self-regulation. And how do we do that? How do we develop self-control? By teaching them proper order and use of time. So paano natin magagawa to? To really sit down with them and say, okay, paano mo ginagamit yung oras mo? Okay, anong oras yung kailangan gumising para sa school? Ilang oras ang ginagamit mo para maggawa ng homework or mag-relax, mag-exercise or gumawa ng iba pang activities. And relative to that, how much time will be used for playing games or being in social media and how they use the time. So we need to guide them on their schedules. Second, we do have to limit the screen time in favor of study and rest. We have to be vigilant and find out how much screen time they are using. No? You observe natin, and then we're gonna have to see whether their study and rest are actually being compromised. And we'll have to set boundaries. We'll talk about that in a while. No? It's a major risk actually now among children, young people, that they don't get enough rest. And it's not good for their developing brains, and it's more so, it's not good for their academics. Hindi sila nakaka-concentrate, their minds are not in their top shape if they don't get enough rest. And that applies even to us, just to remind ourselves. Now we have to set the example. If they see us, binging on Facebook or YouTube or Netflix up to the wee hours of the morning, then we will not have the credibility or moral high ground to actually limit their own screen times. We need to distinguish between needs and wants. No, marami nagsasabi na marami tayong maririnig sa kanila. Ay, kailangan ko dito. Kailangan ko ng bagong telepono, kailangan ko ng bagong bag, kailangan ko ng bagong designer jeans. Ang tanong natin, kailangan ibalik natin yung tanong, kailangan o gusto? Do you need it or you just want it? No? So we need to begin training their minds to really be very very prudent in what is it that kailangan talaga nila, what they need, versus yung luho lang. And set boundaries, and we'll go into that as another action point. No? So isa sa mga importanteng ways actually for developing self-control is by giving them healthy doses of vitamin N. What is vitamin N? Can you guess what vitamin N stands for? Okay, may guess na ba kayo? N stands for no. We have to actually say it to them, but say it as lovingly as possible. So may kaibahan yung hindi sa anak, hindi pwede. See? So, and when we say it, we have to say it with love, and we have to give the reasons why. With a lot of patience in explaining why we say no. Okay? Now, so you have to be ready, especially this generation, they know a lot of things. No? They feel that they know things. And it's not sufficient anymore that we just say, no, because I said so. We have to give them the reasons. So, example, I tell Nathan yung bunso, anak, you can only spend 2 hours of gaming every weekend. And he will say, bakit si daddy or bakit si kuya mas matagal sa pag-game? And I explain, because your brains are still developing. And it will hurt your brain kapag masyadong maraming gaming. So that's how I explain it. So again, no, you would have to you have to be ready with the reason why you will say no. But they have to get used to hearing the word no, because it sets actually the boundaries, which teenagers really need to hear, in particular, no, teenagers, because their brains, physiologically speaking, yung part ng brain na nasa likod na is responsible for emotion is the emotion, thrill, adventure, ganyan, must develop than the front part of the brain that is responsible for self-regulation. So we have to be the one to actually help them regulate what their emotions are actually telling them to do. Ideally, no, give healthy doses of vitamin N before they become adolescents. So, yung mga anak kung sa inyo na meron pang mga hindi pa high school, hindi pa adolescent, ideally bigyan niyo na sila ng vitamin N before adolescents. Mas mahirap pagka adolescent or teenager na sila, but it's not impossible, no? So again, really distinguishing between needs and wants. So now let's go to the second character trait that we must develop in our children, no? And it's called patience, perseverance, or grit, no? So, and it's embodied in what we call adversity quotient. So dati, di ba, merong intelligence quotient, tapos merong emotional quotient, emotional intelligence quotient. Ngayon, actually, psychologists are calling this adversity quotient, or yung ability ng mga tao and our kids to bear adversity. And I'm going to share with you a video by a very well-known, doctor, no? Her name is Dr. Angela Duckworth. She actually authored a book entitled Grit. And I'll show you the video para maintindihan natin how important grit is.
When I was 27 years old, I left a very demanding job in management consulting for a job that was even more demanding, teaching. I went to teach 7th graders math in the New York City public schools. And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests, I gave out homework assignments. When the work came back, I calculated grades. What struck me was that IQ was not the only difference between my best and my worst students. Some of my strongest performers did not have stratospheric IQ scores. Some of my smartest kids weren't doing so well. And that got me thinking. The kinds of things you need to learn in 7th grade math, sure, they're hard. Ratios, decimals, the area of a parallelogram. But these concepts are not impossible. And I was firmly convinced that every one of my students could learn the material if they worked hard and long enough. After several more years of teaching, I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of students and learning from a motivational perspective, from a psychological perspective. In education, the one thing we know how to measure best is IQ. But what if doing well in school and in life depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? So I left the classroom and I went to graduate school to become a psychologist. I started studying kids and adults in all kinds of super challenging settings. And in every study, my question was, who is successful here and why? My research team and I went to West Point Military Academy. We tried to predict which cadets would stay in military training and which would drop out. We went to the National Spelling Bee and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs and who's going to earn the most money. In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, it wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure, things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run? The honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that talent doesn't make you gritty. Our data show very clearly that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In fact, in our data, grit is usually unrelated or even inversely related to measures of talent. So far, the best idea I've heard about building grit in kids is something called growth mindset. This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, and it is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. Dr. Dweck has shown that when kids read and learn about the brain and how it changes and grows in response to challenge, they're much more likely to persevere when they fail because they don't believe that failure is a permanent condition. So growth mindset is a great idea for building grit, but we need more. And that's where I'm going to end my remarks, because that's where we are. That's the work that stands before us. We need to take our best ideas, our strongest intuitions, and we need to test them. We need to measure whether we've been successful, and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. In other words, we need to be gritty about getting our kids grittier. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Dr. Angela Duckworth, and it's one of the most watched TED Talks. No? So if you want to research more. So since that talk, no, she has actually been researching about grit, and she came up with a book, no, about how to develop grit. I'm going to share with you also some of the things that other researchers have also found in terms of, you know, developing perseverance, patience, and grit. No, one of them is classic reading. Kailangang magbasa ng mga anak natin. No? So there is a lot of science also behind, you know, the benefits of reading. And essentially, ang natututunan nila pagka nagbabasa sila is yung hihintayin nila, pagtsatsagaan nila na basahin yung text kahit walang mga pictures, walang gumagalaw na parts, no? in order to para makita ko lang paano yung kwento, paano mangyayari yung kwento. So there's value in in doing something that's taxing or in delayed gratification. And I know challenge to, no, to get our children to read. So some of the tactics that we have with our children is talagang unang-una, may libro talaga. May mga dapat sa bahay nakikita nila merong mga libro. Second, they must see us reading. Again, model it. And third is to ask them to support any kind of genre or kind of books that they want to read, no? Kung minsan gusto nila manga, sige, kahit na magsimula na may drawing pa, na may comics, sige, at least masanay sila na merong binabasa. And then eventually ask them kung ano yung gusto nila, fiction ba, non-fiction, and or whatever kinds of books, na gusto nila. I know it's an investment, pero meron namang tayong mahanap na medyo mura-mura na libro, but it is definitely one of the ways to develop that patience. The next one is play. Lalo pa sa mga younger kids. And we do need to give them toys, kagaya nito, no? Toys na maglalaruan nila. Napapansin natin lahat na parang yung cellphone or iPad ginagawang yaya. It's become a babysitter. Why? Kasi the moment bigyan natin sila ng cellphone or or iPad, tatahimik. But a lot of doctors already, when I would give talks like this, have confirmed na iba talaga yung nagiging connection sa brain nila kung cellphone ang gagamitin na maglaro versus actual real toys. Bakit? Mas mabilis, mas maraming gumagalaw sa cellphone, samantalang dito mas focused sila. So they really need to find things to play. They need to have toys to play with. Lalo pa yung mga bata, pagka medyo adolescent na, we'll go into that next, which is sports ang kailangan. No? But we do have to invest also in toys, in making them play. So as I mentioned, sports. My husband and I are very, very strong advocates of sports. Bakit? Kasi dyan talaga sila matututo ng adversity quotient, no? Na kailangan nila mag-practice ng pagkatagal-tagal bago sila makapaglaro. And firstly, when they're physically active, lahat ng mga energies nila as adolescents, no, lalo pa yung mga adolescents, na ilalabas through sports. And while they're playing sports, they're not on their phones, di ba? So, i-share ko lang na si Ryan, yung panganay namin, actually, he graduated from UP. He took up sports science. And bata pa lang sila, nasa grade school pa lang, na involved na sila sa football or soccer, no? So, football. Ang ginawa namin yung time na yun, dahil talagang interesado siya sa football, sinuportahan namin. Every time may game siya, a-attend kami kahit na weekend, no? Kung ano man yung kailangan niya na sapatos or kung minsan trip na kasama siya sa palarong pagbansa, sige lang, sakripisyo talaga sa gastos. Magpapaalam yan maaga kung minsan magpa-practice sila. Alas 5, alas 6 ng umaga, sige lang. Pero ang rule namin sa kanya nung time na yun is mapapagpatuloy mo lang football mo kung ayos ang academics mo. So, ibig sabihin, hindi ka pwedeng bumabagsak at okay ang grades mo. So, he make good that promise, that commitment. So, his studies was okay. He was able to enter UP as a varsity scholar. So, we did not pay anything for his university, no? And eventually, he became a co-captain of the UP men's football team. In the 5 years na naglalaro siya for UP, minsan lang sila nag-champion. Kadalasan, for the 4 years, they would make it to the finals, but they would lose. And of course, all those times, no, when they would lose, he would cry, he would feel so bad. Why? Kasi the requirement or preparation nila for UAAP is really very rigorous. Everyday training at 6 a.m. and their diets are very controlled. Minsan kamote lang or itlog ang pwede nilang kainin. And then from his practice early in the morning, he will go to his classes at 8:30 in the morning. Hindi pa nakapag-shower, diretso siya sa klase niya sa UP. Pero he was able to go through that and bear all of that kahit na minsan lang nag-champion, kahit mas maraming beses na natalo sila kaysa nanalo. But when he graduated from UP, he graduated he was a co-captain of the football team, and he graduated with honors cum laude. So now he is coaching actually young boys and girls on football under a company called Grit Sports, because he really advocates for the development of grit through sports. No? So, and kino-coach niya na pag ang mga natalo sila, it's like, mas importante matutunan natin kung ano yung pwede pa nating i-improve, at kailangan makita nila na hindi permanent yung pagkatalo na yun, which is what Dr. Angela Duckworth mentioned as growth mindset, which we can help our children on, no? Para makita nila na yung pagiging talo, or kung meron man silang encounter na roadblock or failure, it's not permanent, and they can bounce back from that. And us parents are the best coaches para sa mga anak natin during those times, para ma-develop nila ang grit or patience, or what's called adversity quotient. And it is so important because marami sa mga kabataan ngayon ang madaling mag-give up. In fact, sometimes it even leads to suicide, because they think wala na pag-asa yung buhay, talunan ako, hindi ko to kaya. So, it is really so important for us to help to develop in them that perseverance, that grit, yung matiis nila ang hirap ng buhay. Okay, so how do we develop grit? No? So first suggestion is to let them experience failure and pain. Why is that? Bakit kasi nasabi to? Sometimes may mga nakikita ko mga parents na tinatawag nating helicopter parents. Those that do everything para hindi masaktan yung mga anak. Or bago pa lang madapa, kumbaga sasaluhin na. No? Hindi sila matututo. So kailangan hayaan natin na ma-experience nila yon. Don't make their life very comfortable. Pero pagka na-experience nila yon, failure and pain na yon, we have to be there to process it. We have to encourage them to pick themselves up and try again. And this is part of being authoritative parents. No, we're not gonna be soft on them, but we will be there. Kakampi nila tayo yung magsusupport. But wag nating sasabihin, nga kasi kasalanan ng teacher mo kasalanan ng coach mo kasalanan ng ibang tao. Parang we're making it sound like it's the whole world against our kids. No, we have to make them realize that these things happen in life, no? So i-process natin, encourage them to pick themselves up and try again. No? But don't solve it for them. Hindi pa pwedeng sabihin nyo, sige na nga, kakausapin yung teacher mo para taasan yung grade mo, or bigyan ka ng isa pang pagkakataong magkumuha ng test. They will be learning the wrong lesson. They have to learn the lesson of being able to pick up their fights for themselves, but we have to coach them on how to do it and encourage them na kaya nila. No? So ito nga yung quote, no? Don't prepare the road for them, prepare them for the road of life. Hindi po pwedeng nakalatag na magandang carpet, that they will just walk on an easy life. We have to make them realize that life is not all a bed of roses, and therefore they must have that adversity quotient and strength to weather through the ups and downs that will really come, in life. All right, the third character trait, the last character trait that's very critical, is what's called discernment, critical thinking, or judgment. No? Why is that? Nako, lalo pa ngayon, no? Usong-uso ang fake news. Lalo pa during this time of the elections, diba, there's so many wrong things, wrong, hindi totoo na nakakalat, no? So we cannot allow ourselves and our children be misled by falsehood. We have to teach them to discern ano yung tama, yung truth and falsehood, what is good and what is evil, and what is right versus wrong. So kailangan silang na-develop natin to critical thinking so that they will have the ability to actually discern, suriin, tignan talaga totoo ba to? Ano yung sana yung nagsasabi ng mga ganitong kumbaga news, totoo ba, credible ba na sources or gawa-gawa lang? So very relevant, no? How do we now pagdating sa mga decisions that they need to make in life, no? How do we develop critical thinking? This is an example of a step by step na pwede natin gamitin, no? Identify the problem, create alternatives, no? So evaluate the alternatives and decide on the best solution. So kailangan natin silang pag-isipin. Questions like, ano sa palagay mo? What do you think? What are your options? What are the pros and cons sa pag-evaluate, no, ng mga alternatives? And what will happen if you do this and you do that? And make them decide. Hindi yung pagka tayo lagi nagbibigay ng sagot, hindi, ito na lang gagawin mo. Pagka ganun, pag laging ang sagot nanggagaling sa atin, they will not learn to think, critically for themselves. And it's only after that that they can then, realize or decide on what the best solution will be. So, kailangan, alam ko, madaling, mas madaling magsabi, ito gagawin mo, ito gawin mo. Kasi syempre, mas marami tayong alam, mas nakakatanda tayo. But when we do that, hindi sila na-practice na mag-isip for themselves. So as they are answering these things, pwede natin i-guide. O pag sinabi yung, ano mangyayari pag ganito gagawin mo or pag ganyan gagawin mo. And then we can give our input and, suggest, if medyo mali yung sagot nila, then we'll say, palagay ko, actually ang mangyayari pag ito yung pinursu mo or ganito yung gagawin, ganito yung mangyayari. And then give them i-practice natin sila na sila ang magde-decide. So some other examples of questions to ask to help your teenagers problem solve. No, what's upsetting you? Why do you need this? What do you think might happen? What's the worst that can happen? And why is this so important to you? So again, questions for them to reflect. As I mentioned earlier, they receive a lot of information. Parang ang dami nila alam, pero parang pasok lang ng pasok, hindi nila pinag-iisipan kung minsan, yung mga bagay-bagay. So we need to have them, think deeper into things that they know. Okay. Now, when we do this, our communication has to be very open and non-directive. Hindi yung basta ito dapat ang gagawin mo, ito dapat ang iisipin mo. Kailangan open and sila ang magbibigay ng sagot, no? There will be, yung meron times na madali nating sabihin, ako kasi ikaw naman bakit ganito yung pag-iisip mo, naku, ganyan. So judgmental statements yon we should avoid. As I said earlier, they're going through, a time when self-esteem is quite fragile. Not to say naman na palagi natin silang pupuriin, pero let's avoid those judgmental statements. So to summarize, in this action point, in the second action point, which is develop their character, the 3 character traits that are important. First, self-control. Second, grit. And third is critical thinking. Let's now go into the third action point, which is setting boundaries. Okay, so why set boundaries? Here, I'm quoting from one doctor who's an addiction expert, and he says, in my clinical work with over 1,000 teens over the past 15 years, I have found the old axiom of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure to be especially true when it comes to tech addiction. Once a kid has crossed the line into true tech addiction, treatment can be very difficult. Indeed, I have found it easier to treat heroin and crystal meth addicts, yung mga addicts sa shabu, than lost in the matrix video gamers or Facebook dependent social media addicts. So what is this saying? It's very hard to treat kung pathologic na. So better that we prevent addiction before it happens. So the way to do that is really setting boundaries. I know it's not gonna be easy. I know with all the 5 children, lahat namin, no, lahat pagka nagsiset kami ng boundaries, sabi namin, oh, tama na yan, or yun know, gantong rules, no, nagtatantrum sila. They will be mad at you, sabi nila, ano ba yan, ganyan. As I mentioned earlier, no is a loving word. We have to say it with love, but we have to still give that vitamin N to them. No? And that's about putting, the boundaries. So, ano yung sinasabi ng mga bihasa, no? The American Academy of Pediatrics. What are the guidelines that they give? Screen times 0. Kung less than 2 years old, they should not have any screen time. Better bigyan sila ng toys. Okay? Huwag natin gawing yaya yung screen, yung phone or yung iPad. And for children, more above 2 years old and teenagers, 1 to 2 hours only a day. So for now, given na ngayon nag-online classes pa, no, we have to actually set the boundaries on screen time for non-education purposes. Siyempre, pag pumapasok, kaharap talaga nila yung computer. Pero ang sinasabi natin dito na screen time are those na for entertainment, for gaming, for messaging, etc. No? So these are some examples. Pagka weekday, walang games. That's what we actually have with our youngest right now. He can only play games during weekends. Second, only after, or it can be also only after doing homework. So you can check your social media after matapos yung homework. Or meron ako ibang mga nakilala na parents na sabi, sige, magbasa ka muna, and then 2 hours noon, makakakuha ka ng 1 oras na play. In addition to that, no, aside from giving specific rules, and you have to decide the rules that would fit each of your children, no? Bawat isa. As much as possible, maganda sana kung pare-pareho para hindi sila magreklamo na iba-iba yung rules. But you'd have to then discern what would be the right rules for each child. The second is to control their digital environment. What does that mean? Hanggat maaari, no TV or computers in bedrooms, only common areas. Why is that? So that we can see what they are actually watching or doing. Monitor the ratings of games and TV shows that they watch. Dito pumapasok mga notions that may be against our values, especially pagka na-normalize certain things, no, sa mga movies, sa mga games, or shows, no. For example, may mga games na talagang very violent. So kailangan nating ma-check yung ratings. Or mag-install kayo ng computer filter. Maraming available. Just Google computer filter, parental controls, kanyan. Maraming mailalagay sa computer, no. I know of some friends that they say they turn off the Wi-Fi router at a certain time in the evening, or sinusurrender ng mga anak nila ang kanilang phones bago matulog. So that's a way to control the digital environment. Also have strict rules about social media. Do not divulge personal information to strangers. That's, we don't want them in any to get into any harmful situation, because there are times when pag alam yung personal information nila, like their address, their phone numbers, to strangers, then it can lead to something physically dangerous. No foul language and no inappropriate photos. Ang kabataan ko minsan natitempt sila dahil sa peer pressure magpadala ng mga nude na photos nila. Dati uso yun sa Snapchat, and there was a time when kayang screenshot sa Snapchat yung mga ganon, and then nagiging viral. So our kids need to know and learn that whatever you put out there in the digital world remains permanent as a permanent record in the digital world, no? So may it's a digital footprint, no? And they have to be careful about what they really set out or send out in social media. Have clear guidelines also in movies, no? Draw the line on content that they cannot watch. So you'll have to say, walang movie na R rating, or walang movie na ang tema is about, let's say, gay marriage, ganon, no? No movie marathons that compromise proper sleep. Nako yan, Netflix. You must know that the content, no, or all of these shows are really written so that mabibitin ka at gusto mo pang next episode at next episode, no? We have clients in the media industry, and that's really how they develop content. So and kung hindi natin pipigilan yon, mahirap to practice self-control. So we'll say, okay, may curfew hanggang 10 p.m. lang or hanggang 11 p.m. lang ang pagpanunood, especially during weekdays na may pasok sila. So no movie marathons, and have a conversation with them about the main plot of the TV series or the movies that they watch. This could be very good conversations that you will have in your one-on-ones. Important also to carve and defend family time and space. Kailangan respetado yan. So for example, pagka, while we're in the dining table, no, during meals, no gadgets. And mommy and daddy will need to be the first to follow the rules. Second, you can have media-free vacations or days, no? Magbabakasyon kayo, tapos ipupunta kayo sa isang lugar na walang signal o di kaya, in a particular day, kailangan i-confiscate yung mga phone para talagang you will enjoy just each other's company. Or kung minsan, pag nakikinig sila ng music, isa lang actually na earphone ang nakalagay, yung isa nakalabas. So bakit? Para maririnig pa rin nila kung tinatawag na sila or kinakausap sila. So have alternative family activities. That's one other way, no? Kasi they must see na hindi lang bawal. Ano gagawin nila instead? So come up with ideas so that you will have activities together sa family. For example, family game night, Scrabble or Monopoly or kung ano man ang pwede nyong malaro, no? Pwede rin patintero, no? Bond over old family photos, ilabas nyo yung mga album ninyo and pakita nyo kung ano yung itsura nila, maliliit pa sila. Or jigsaw puzzle, group call with distant relatives, no? Mag-call kayo, tawagan yung mga kamag-anak na nasa malayo, no? Walk around together in an open park, no? Ngayon na medyo pwedeng tayong makalabas-labas, no? Yayain nyo lang sila to walk around or to bike, no? And as I mentioned earlier, one-on-one dates. Now, I must say before I go to the next topic that setting boundaries may seem very tough. Pero that is why I started na unahin natin yung relationship. They must feel that and know and be convinced that there is love, that they are loved, and that all of these rules are because we want the best for them. So that's what we've experienced, no? Sinigurado namin that they somehow the message that they are loved unconditionally by us is there. Naintindihan nilang mahal sila. Of course, nung nagbibigay na kami ng rules, nagagalit sila, nagtantrum. Minsan nga, 2 weeks pa nagtatantrum dahil sabi namin hindi kayo pwedeng manood ng TV during weekdays. But after a while, after a month or so, no, di sila na mismo nagsabing thank you kasi nagagawa na namin yung homework namin. So mas ma-accept nila and mas ma-accept nila at mas magko-comply sila on the rules if to begin with meron kayong relationship with them. Okay? So one last thing, no, online learning. I know it's a challenge and many are asking paano ba to natin ina-navigate, no? So I'd recommend a book by Queen Ali Chua, Raising Independent Learners. So yung mga tips niya doon, no, yung mga nag-thrive daw ngayon, yung maging talagang solid na study habits. So yung study habits, so ibig sabihin nun, yung talagang ano na parang habitual na sa kanila na pagkatapos mag-online classes, gagawin yung homework, maayos yung mga gamit nila, alam nila paano mag-focus habang nag-aaral, nagsa-study sila, gumagawa ng homework, walang distractions, yung ganun, no? Solid study habits. And how do they do that? How do they get these study habits? We have to make time to guide them to acquire these study habits. We have to make time talaga. Teach them time management. I mentioned this earlier, no, order and the time management. And help them schedule their day. Anong oras sila mag-aaral, matutulog, kakain, mag-exercise, family bonding, and prayer. And structure the home environment well. Make sure lang na meron talaga silang maayos na desk at magagawa, kung saan nila magagawa yung kanilang studies. And communicate well as a family. And again, really have rules in the use of gadgets for non-education purposes. Last but not the least in our action plan is prayer. Okay, so this is a battle that we cannot win just by our sheer human powers. We really need divine intervention and divine help. No? So we have to pray for them, that they will be protected from any evil, that they will be kept safe, because we will not be overlooking their shoulders all the time. We have to pray for ourselves. It is not easy. It's not easy. I must say, ako mismo, no? Merong times talaga mauubusan ka ng pasensya. So, or mag-give up na parang ginagawa ko ba ito ng tama? Ano mangyayari sa mga anak ko? No? So, but we have to just pray for ourselves, and importantly, to teach them to pray. First, by our example. Example na nagdadasal tayo ng rosaryo, nakita na tayo nagdadasal bago kumain, bago matulog. We go to Mass every Sunday, and teach them how to pray, to have that relationship with God. And last, important, no, na share kong tip is, you try and encourage them to have that core identity of being a child of God. Lahat tayo, daughters and sons of God. Even before they become your children, or, before, hindi natin maaangkin na anak natin to, kasi unang-una, anak sila ng Diyos. And once they have that security of being a child of God, they know that whatever happens in their life, if friends fail them, if technology fails them, if us parents fail them, God will never fail them. With that, thank you very much for listening. God bless all our families. And I hope you had learned something from this talk. I wish you all the best of luck. And again, thank you so much and good morning.
What a way to end the second session of our webinar. Thank you so much, Ms. Pauline, for the substantial discussion of this timely topic, parenting the digital generation. Indeed, this is what our dear parents needed in this generation we have right now. At this juncture, it is just right for us to express our sincerest gratitude towards our dear resource persons for accepting our invitation. So to present the token and certificate of appreciation, may I call on Ma'am Shane S. Andraca, Grade 9 Level Coordinator from Science Department.
Camarines Sur National High School, City of Naga, Grade 9 Level Organization, Math and Science Department, Certificate of Appreciation is given to for sharing her time and expertise as a resource speaker during the parenting webinar with the topic, Managing Stress and Parenting Difficulties, Moving Forward from COVID-19 Crisis, held on April 30, 2022 at Camarines Sur National High School, Naga City. given this 30th day of April 2022 at CSNHS Naga City. Signed, Shane S. Endraca, Grade 9 Coordinator, Jose B. Shelo, Head Teacher 6, Grade 9 Consultant, Dexter E. Cornejo, Head Science Department, Elsa L. Malapo, Head Math Department, and Sulpicio C. Alferez III, Principal. Certificate of Appreciation is given to Rosendo Santiago Tadeo Juan I. Badilla. The same certificate is given to Janet B. Badilla. Same certificate is given to Juan Romulo Michel B. Badilla. Certificate of Appreciation is given to Ana Dominic Z. De Jos. Certificate of Appreciation is given to Aurelia Pauline G. Fermin.
Thank you, Ma'am Shane. Moving on, for his closing message, let's call on our ever-flexible Grade 9 Consultant and Head Teacher of Science Department, Sir Dexter E. Cornejo.
To our beloved Principal, Sir Jojo Alvarez, to our Assistant Principals, co-department heads, teachers, parents, and students attending this webinar, good afternoon. First and foremost, allow me to congratulate the Grade 9 year-level organization for spearheading this activity together with mathematics and science departments. Thank you and congratulations for having this webinar. Indeed, it is a very timely and very important activity that our parents and youth, particularly our students, need at the present times. Managing stress and parenting difficulties moving forward from COVID-19 crisis. Everybody, not only several, everybody experienced this crisis that we had. Yet, with this type of activities, our learnings and our experiences gives us a new idea on how to cope with this phenomena. Now, to our speakers, particularly the Badilla family, Sir Rosendo, Ma'am Janet, and Sir Juan Romulo Michael. Of course, Ma'am Ana Dominic De Jos and Ma'am Pauline G. Fermin. Thank you very much for giving your time. I know everybody was able to get indeed the lessons and of course ideas that we can be able to cope with this crisis, for us to be able to move forward, moving forward for a better days that we had now. So we are now on the so we say stage at which we will now be stepping forward from this pandemic. Indeed, the lessons or so to say the ideas that you shared to us enlightened us, enlightened everybody, particularly our youth of today, our students, for them to be able to so to say experience this webinar, that there are for them to realize that there are lots of people who really cared for them. Also for our parents, for them to be able to face the reality. Although the truth is, some are still in the denial stage as to the effect of pandemic to them. So, for this webinar, the enlightenment gives us a million knowledge for us to face and move forward. Also, to the technical staffs of Camarines Sur National High School, the ICT group, thank you very much for spending time in supporting us with this endeavor. To all, may all these lessons be applied in our day-to-day activities, in facing, and of course, in trying to cope with this crisis. Congratulations again to the organizers, to everybody who helped in one way or another making this a successful activity. Congratulations and thank you very much.
There you have it, our beloved parents. We hope that you all learned something helpful from this webinar. This is your host, now signing off.